Patrick Finnegan here, wearing my Novak Djokovic hat. So I am here wearing this hat to commemorate Novak Djokovic in his what I think is probably going to be his last Grand Slam final. He is 38 years old, and I think he did a great job beating Yannick Sinner. Got to see him in 2021, got to see him in 2023, both at the U.S. Open. Novak Djokovic, that is. And I'm hoping he makes it, hoping he does well for this. But he's old. So what are you gonna do? Anyway, speaking of combatants, let's go into our debate immediately on force doctrine between myself and Andrew Wilson. Let's see if the tech is going to work this time.
Challenge me on force doctrine.
Oh, back that up.
Get tax expertise.
Do you want tax expertise? Force doctrine.
The prompt here came from the audience who wanted to challenge me on force doctrine.
So when you say there are no rights to force, you're not, for the sake of argument, taking a secularist view of like moral nihilism or anything like that. This is your actual view.
Yeah. So here's what the view is for force doctrine, and I'll try to summarize it easily. Okay. Force doctrine is a descriptor. That's all it is. It's just pointing out that most everything that people will point to as a right, which is naturally occurring, is completely made up nonsense, and they're actually appealing to force.
Okay. I disagree with this on a theological level, and we get into that. I think that because I had another two debates before this, of course, he could realize that I'm coming from a Christian point of view on this, and he knows that secularists don't have any metaphysic that makes any sense. Everything is just emergent from the mind of a secularist. It's not going to actually occur to them that none of this is real, or if it does occur to them that it's not real, it's still going to affect how they feel about other people, about how they feel about different actions. Because I would argue that we all have a conscience. We're all made in the image of God. And so, hey, someone's looking at my chat. Bass Guitar says, hey, reviewing the Wilson debate. Yes, absolutely. I'm reviewing the Wilson debate. So I'm doing my version, obviously. I'm still waiting for you to do yours. You got a channel up and running. You've done a couple debates already. You've faced off against Rob Noor on a marathon, man. But yeah. So here, let me get back to the debate. So the idea here would be, I disagree with his idea of force doctrine because rights are real. Rights are grounded in the fact that we're made in the image of God. That's what my debate on slavery was about in many ways, that you can catch on not modern day debate. You can catch that one on Speakeasy's channel. But yeah, so actually, let me back up a second, because how does it put this?
Force doctrine is a descriptor.
Force doctrine is a descriptor. So that can be taken a couple different ways. Either it's if in a secularist worldview, maybe all that there is left is descriptors in his mind there, which would make sense, because if we're going to assign identities to things basically as descriptors and just linguistic conveniences in order to identify things for our ends, then yeah, anything could be called a descriptor in a secularist point of view. Un momento.
That's all it is. We're just pointing out that most everything that people will point to as a right, which is naturally occurring, is completely made up nonsense, and they're actually appealing to force.
This also relates to what I call the infinite regressive value, where if you are an atheist or a secularist, then I will ask you, well, hey, so why should we do X instead of Y? And you'll say, because X is good in some way, or we get a benefit from X. And then I'll be like, well, what gives X value? And then they will say, because I get this result. And I'll say, what gives that result value? Well, because you get this out of it. Well, what gives that value? And then it goes on and on. And before long, you realize that anything made of matter or energy doesn't have inherent value. And it continues to rely on something else. It continues to rely on something preceding before it to justify its value. But once you ask anything of the value of the thing that came before it, you get an infinite regress that goes around in a circle until you've covered every physical phenomenon and energy in the universe, and be like, you know what? This is just circular reasoning. I assign value to things and I don't have a justification for them.
The purpose of this is to point out that if rights were to even exist, they would have to have something which was grounded outside of your imagination. You would probably say something like God.
Yes.
Something like that, right? But when we look at the world, the descriptor just shows one thing: might makes. Now, you can argue whether or not it makes right, but it makes. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Now, if you guys are wondering who Bass Guitar is, it's this guy over here, giving the stern look to Andrew Wilson. Go like and subscribe his channel and his content. All right, let's back that up.
Audience wanted to summarize it easily. Okay. Naturally occurring is completely made up nonsense, and they're actually appealing to force. The purpose of this is to point out that if rights were to even exist, they would have to have something which was grounded outside of your imagination. You would probably say something like God, something like that, right? But when we look at the world, the descriptor just shows one thing: might makes. Now, you can argue whether or not it makes right, but it makes. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The more contentious part of force doctrine is that women have to appeal to men for rights under this category, and there's no two ways about that.
Okay.
So when he that is the triggering part for feminists, obviously, is if rights don't exist, then it might makes right, and men on average are stronger than women. Men on average have built society. I mean, I am not actually talking about women building society, because that hasn't come to mind as far as like making castles and waging wars and all that kind of stuff. There have been women in leadership, but obviously the military strength comes through men. Bass Guitar says, "Oop, here we go. Could value simply be an emergent phenomenon, like water is wet, but a molecule of H2O isn't?" So because value is prescriptive, I think that anything, if you say something has value, like if human life has value and you say it's emergent, well, how do you measure that emergent property? So if we say water is wet, obviously that's a descriptor. But when you say it's an emergent phenomenon, it's feels like you're making a spiritual claim, because that has to do with prescriptive laws for people. So if I say you shall not murder, that means two things: that there is just such a thing as justification, because there can be a justified killing, and then there's also the fact that life has value. And so if you're going to kill somebody, it better be for a really, 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 really good reason before you do it. So you'd have to show what value. Usually when it comes to secularists asking about moral claims, they'll say, show me the evidence for morality. And then they'll say that because I can't produce a physical, testable, repeatable phenomenon, that therefore there's no good reason to believe that morality exists. But if we say value is an emergent property, then value, if we're consistent, value is no different than the emotions we get from dopamine or anything else that we just emotively value. That's why there are non-cognitivists, there are emotivists, and things like that.
So if I would say, look at 1 Corinthians 7, verses 1 through 5, and Exodus 21, talking about conjugal rights, saying the man does not have authority over his own body, but the woman, and the woman does not have authority over her own body, but the man. Those are often referred to as conjugal rights. Is there any force in that equation of rights that are deemed a moral right?
What do you mean?
So if the woman says, I want to have sex tonight, and she's married to this man, and the man can't refuse based on what the Bible says.
Can she force herself on him?
Yeah, of course not, because that would not be loving your neighbor. Obviously, to force yourself on somebody else, that would not be loving. Obviously, when the Bible says to men, "Men, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave his life for her," obviously, the principle that is powerful enough to say "give your life for her" would also mean back off and don't be forceful. Duh.
So
is that what you're asking?
No, the question is, because it's referred to as conjugal rights for the reason that she has the right to do it, where does the force actually come into that dynamic?
Well, in that case, it wouldn't, but you're appealing to something which is...
Just wanted everybody to catch that. In that case, it wouldn't. Now, there have been some times, like there was a debate between Andrew and Rob Knorr on whether or not you could, philosophically speaking, SA your wife. And I don't know if that was just a joke, but I don't like that joke. Obviously, I don't think anybody should like that joke. And there's Missing Mod. Missing Mod, how you doing? And enjoyed some of the stream the other day. It became really chaotic. I'm thinking the Breakfast Taco space is a very unusual space, and the weird Dungeons and Dragons kind of theme they got going on there with the fedora cap guy running away from the Balrog style demon. I don't know, not my space. And I looked up some of the Jay Isle debates he was going. Fast-paced, talking kind of guy, very sure of himself. I think I was listening to a debate he had last night with a guy over historicity and things like that. And when it stopped becoming about historical documents and started becoming about supernatural claims, he would discount that as magic. Now, I would classify magic as effects from something without the capability of producing that effect. So I wouldn't even call God's power magic. I would call it, there's natural and there's supernatural. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. This is why my thing is overthinking made easy, because it is easy for me to overthink all these things. But anyway, back to the topic of the video.
Which is grounded.
Okay.
So you're saying there's something here which is grounded that I'm going to appeal to for rights are not coming out of your head.
Okay.
Right. Now, you could argue against that grounding. You could say God is not real, or you could say Christianity is fake, or none of it's true, or things like that. But you're at least appealing to something which is grounded. It's not. It doesn't just come out of your mind.
So
yeah. So obviously, if matter was all there is, then matter itself does not serve as a moral authority. If God, who is a person, three persons, and specifically biblically with God, then you could have authority, you could have structure, you could have purpose. If somebody writes a song and says, this song is about my spouse, and then somebody else comes along who didn't write the song, didn't create the song, and says, this song is about a pie, or this song is about a book, or this song is about a bell. It's like, no, you're objectively wrong. I made the song. I know the teleology, the purpose of this song. And then somebody says, well, I had a subjective experience with this song. Irrelevant. So same thing with mankind. So if mankind was made for a purpose, if mankind specifically was made in God's image, then it doesn't matter what your subjective experience or lack of knowledge of a thing would be. That is what it is. And so it would only be congruent to say if humans have rights, if humans have duties and responsibilities, that doesn't come from floating rocks in space. It doesn't come from empty space. It comes from a person, and this person has to be transcendent. This person has to be authoritative, and this person has to have communicated this, obviously. And God has communicated that in our conscience, even if we never read the Bible, even if we never heard the name Jesus. This is actually in Romans chapter 1, verse 18, I believe. Just going to hit that up real quick as proof text. Romans 1, verses 18. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. Back to the debate.
I agree that rights within the Christian framework do exist and can exist absent of force, although enforcement is pointing to the existence of the right and it needs to be enforced when that right is either violated or denied.
I do think the only way you can make a justification for a right would be through the grounding of God. Now, I would...
Okay, so I have not, prior to this debate, heard Andrew say anything like this. All the force doctrine debates have been against lefties. None of them have been against a right winger. So up until this point where I come in from my angle, you never hear Andrew say this. And I don't think you've heard Andrew say this since.
I would only counter this in one way by saying I think most of the things that you would appeal to as rights biblically would actually be duties.
Yeah. So
I agree that duties are involved insofar as the state is involved, insofar as parents are involved, any authority, any responsibility structure, there are duties involved, but the duties, I would say, are emergent from the fact that we are made in God's image, which confers us those rights.
Like even when you're talking about conjugal rights, aren't you really talking about a duty?
Duty in terms of who has to do the doing, but right in terms of like if the man says no, he is denying a right in the role of the dynamic in place. So if she initiates and says, I want to have sex tonight,
right. But the right here is affirmed through the duty itself.
And the enforcement would be the punishment for lack of duty, like say God gives judgment to them. But that's three things going on at once. You have the right, you have the duty, and you have the moral law. I guess four things. The moral law and then the enforcement.
You can make an inference of a right through a God-given duty. I wouldn't deny that that's true, but there's some grounding there. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, that's why
if you say rights are natural and they come from the minds of people, right? And then any of those rights that you would point to, I would just say that you're actually talking about the use of force, all of them.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. That's why I asked you at the very beginning of this prompt, are you using it as a framework for secularists to understand that they have an inherent problem?
Yeah, I would just only make the criticism.
Again, the reason I had to ask that is because I've never heard him actually admit that rights could be grounded in something. And in a way, he seems to engineer his point of view to reflect that they can, but he obviously finds it more advantageous in debate to show in the ways that they can't if you're a secularist. Um,
On the Christian ethical side, that most of the things that Christians in modernity point to as being natural rights, they're actually pointing to duties, which then infer right. Without the duty, there's no inference of right there.
Yeah. So give me an example of where they're misattributing something that is actually a duty, or sorry, that's something that they say is a right, but is actually a duty.
These would be really simple things like, do you agree that under Christian ethics, you're required to take care of your children?
Absolutely.
That's a duty.
Yeah, it says
But
he
that-
does not take care of his
but doesn't
household,
that-
is denied the faith,
but
and is
does
worse
that
than an
in-
unbeliever.
1 Timothy 5:8.
Does that infer the right that the child then has a right for the parents to take care of them?
In a sense, because
Yeah.
So this was interesting. What you would imagine in this case, if I said that, oh yes, the child has a right for a parent to take care of them, then you imagine this bell on a pillow and Daddy, come, I want some milk. That's what you're supposed to imagine. That I think is legit. That's obviously not the case. The son or the daughter has a duty to obey their parents for sure. Respect their parents, obey their parents, for this is right, and it will go well with you in the land, says the Bible. However, the right, I would say, to be taken care of has to do with the fact that obviously, if you're in the custody of these parents and they're not taking care of you, you have a legitimate complaint to God about these parents, that God can correct them, and that's what I bring up. And it doesn't work the same way of like, well, parents are equal to kids, or the authority structure is completely disheveled just because the kids are human beings. That's not how it works. There is order to all of this.
In a
Because the child,
sense.
because the child, not in the sense that a child can appeal to God and ask God to intervene in his life
Right.
and say, "Look, my father's a deadbeat. He needs to get back in
Right.
line."
But you see,
But he doesn't have power over the father.
But do you
He
see
cannot use force
Yeah, yeah,
against his father.
exactly. But do you see how you can quickly attribute that the duty infers a right, and how Christians could say actually the child does have a right. He has a right to be taken care of, and then infer certain ways in which they have to be, which I would just deny that they have a right to.
I
but
agree.
rather than
Yeah, so it's not up to the child to say how they should be taken care of per se, but there are baseline things that should not be violated. Obviously, there's a difference between disciplining the child with corporal punishment and then beating your child, things like that. That you should feed your child, so a child who requests food is not wrong. This is very easily understood, but it's not all or nothing. It's not like if the child has any rights or any say or anything whatsoever, that therefore that they have all the same rights as the parents. It's not one way. And then if you look at the other way, it wouldn't be like, well, the kid has no rights and no complaint to make. That doesn't work either.
that there's
Yeah.
a duty.
So-
Does that make sense?
So I agree that there are oversimplifications and what can be called a right, because it gets a little complicated. With
Gets
things.
murky,
But,
yeah.
but there are things like rights. If you go to Romans 13:5, when it talks about not just for the wrath's sake should you obey the government, but also for conscience sake, because there's a moral law God has imposed because he has put those people in
yeah, but
power.
that's saying you have a duty to do that,
Right, but it's also for conscience sake in terms of like the rights of those in
which you
government.
have, but you have a duty for those things, right?
Right.
So what
but
right
the,
is
but the
inferred?
duty is the response to the right.
What's the right?
The right have
Yeah, so God has rights. If you want to understand rights, ultimately God has rights. Does God have a duty to you? Do you think that God owes you something? Didn't God make you? We want to get. Oh, look, I got really like weird stoner face here going on. That's much better. So, so when we talk about rights, the one with the ultimate rights is God. So if God sets in power structures, he has the right for those power structures to be respected in the way that he has made them, in the way that he has dictated them to be. So if you're going to say that there are no rights, well, on a universal level, there must be rights because God has the right to worship, God has the right to honor, God has the right to our service, God has the right to our love, and everything. God owns everything and has the right to everything, being it is his property. And we'll probably get to that in a later debate that I want to review. But ultimately, when you say, well, is it a right or is it a duty? Well, Since God, absent of creating anything, would still have rights in terms of the right to all the glory, the right to all the worship, then if he did make something, then therefore the things he made would have duty. But fundamentally, he would have rights without duties to anything.
That's
Right.
So what
but
right
the,
is
but the
inferred?
duty is the response to the right.
What's the right?
The right is not actually to the person, but to the office, right? So give honor to whom you give honor, give deference to or taxes is another thing, because the worker deserves his wages. If you do a wage, it's
Yeah.
biblical to give them the
Well, those
day
are,
of
but
the
you're talking about
wage.
positive rights there, right?
That
That if this person's doing this, then there's the duty exists.
Yeah, I don't believe in positive rights in so much as like I am a human, I am sitting here, gimme, gimme, gimme. You don't have a right to somebody else's labor, and you don't have a right to the fruits of somebody else's labor. The government is an entity. The government is not a person. So autocracies and rule by fiat of some dictator is completely wrong. You should have rule of law. You should have consistent law. You shouldn't have it be the whims of a guy who can get angry and say something's right one day and not right the other day. That would put him basically in the place of God, and that's not what government is supposed to do. Government is supposed to be operating in service of the people, not the people operating in service of the government.
Yeah. So here's the thing. You would agree that if somebody worked for somebody, it could be said that you have a right to the wage. The worker deserves his wages, is what the Bible says.
Now, atheists might look at that and say, well, that's just contract theory. That's some sort of agreement that gives it power. But the agreement, what gives the agreement value? Because if I violate the agreement and the agreement has no inherent value, what did I do that was wrong? If the agreement is no more real than the moment we didn't have an agreement, and then now we do have an agreement, what makes the passage of mouth sounds through the air any more enchanted or better than they were before? Unless, of course, God has made you, you're accountable for your words, you're accountable for your oaths, you're accountable for your agreements, then that would make sense. But up until that point, your contract theory, social contract theory, even doesn't hold any actual weight. It's just as fake as any religion that an atheist would like to throw stones at.
Yeah.
I know there's some give
Yeah.
and take because the dynamic of something actually happening
when you're
physically
talking about
is a little different.
right there, you're talking about
Yeah, and it's different, obviously, for those of us who are human that want to say that we have a right to something. He has a point about negative rights. So, for example, if I wanted to go into uh, Ten Commandments, shall have no other gods before me, has to go with God's rights. Shall not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Verse 7, that's God's rights. 6 days thou shalt labor, do all thy work. About the Sabbath, which, changed a bit in the New Testament. You shall not kill, aka murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. Shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Thou shalt not steal is my favorite because it has to do with property rights, which means that property is a real thing and communists are wrong. You should not try to abolish property. But all those things have to do with boundaries that humans have between each other.
something which is implied as an entitlement. So are you entitled to the wages? That's a harder thing. Like that's a harder thing to say, right?
If you do the work, you are entitled to the agreed upon wage. That is true. That you can sue for that for sure.
Like
Yeah,
let's talk like even taxation now at this point.
Mhm.
Are you entitled to
We're gonna have to have a debate about that.
your wage without it being taxed?
So taxes is very complicated. Obviously, the main reason
Just kidding, Mod.
it's complicated because the worker deserves his wages. You're supposed to pay taxes, Romans 13. You can't actually have a government that you're not going to pay the employees of, so it has to exist, right? In the first place, because God establishes the government, so you're supposed to pay taxes in there. The question is, what is a just amount of taxation that justifies the amount of government that should fund the right things? It's so
I have
layered
no
and
fucking
complicated.
clue. Do you?
Right.
Do
No,
you?
no. And that
I have no.
Right. And that's one of the things I want to bring up about the right wing is that the right wing doesn't have a system that demands like this huge tax bracket like some programs on the left do. The right wing has a lot more, I would say, open space for debate in how things are going to go forward, which is why Christian nationalism, which doesn't exist, needs to settle on the fact that there's nothing that necessarily says it should be an ethno state. I am totally anti ethno state, and even those who are saying, well, it's too late for that, it's like, okay, you may admit that it's too late for that in America, but are you principally against it? That's a whole other thing. That debate hopefully comes out very soon. Me and Andrew on ethnostatism. We had one over the case for Christian nationalism having an unchanging standard. But if Christian nationalism can be ethnostate or not ethnostate, then you have to tell me what that standard is first, because that's kind of important.
That's why there's so much. I think there's just so much room on the right to talk about, okay, what is the right thing to do? There are obviously things we shouldn't do.
But you have to start with the idea, I think, of rights themselves as being, especially modern rights or any of these things you would call rights in modern human rights, whatever, are actually just implied social dynamics of empathy, which are then inferred as being something which is deserved or entitled to other people. And it's just made up bullshit. And what they're really talking about is that how they have the force to make you do shit that they want you to do. And then they do that under the guise of it's some kind of right, even though it's not.
Yeah, I agree. Codifying something into written law does not make it real, does not make it true. And if you're atheistic, that's the best you've got, is putting down on paper what you want socially crammed on the rest of society. It's amazing. I would ask people who say, oh, I don't believe in objective morality, do you vote? Because if you vote, then your non-belief in objective morality somehow results in you putting your will upon other people who don't share your view, which is the closest thing to objectivity that you can have. So unless what you're saying is, I don't believe in objective morality, but if I did, I would want my objective morality to be everybody else's, then what gives your personal objective morality value over anybody else? The infinite regress of value continues.
Grounded. That's the point.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's in the sense of how the Bible says, he who does not work shall not eat. You can't just sit around and then we'll just shovel
and then we'll
things
just
at
give you shit.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That's,
So
that's not a right.
I mean, that makes sense, but that's what Fort's doctrine is. It's a descriptor, right? And it's complex when it comes to the Bible because you're talking about an idea of duties first. And generally that's what seems to infer any kind of right, is that there's a duty first rather than the opposite way you see with progressives, a right first and almost never a duty. Right. So that's why I always define this as a right is an entitlement absent any kind of duties.
Yeah, I think in a secularist framework that.
I don't believe that in reality a right is. I think that's a convenient framing to use against leftists because they have no overriding authority. There's nothing outside of matter which would dictate what we should do with our bodies and what we should do with our minds, what we should do with our speech, all this kind of stuff. But I don't think it's fair to say that rights are entitlements absent of duties in reality. In reality, rights are the guardrails that God has put around people made in his own image. That's the easy way to put it.
Definition makes sense. I
think in all frameworks other than perhaps a Christian or an Abrahamic faith base for Muslims, Christians, or Jewish people, that's the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just the way I see it, God makes different offices.
Another way of putting it is that duties are responsive to what is about God. Duties are the due response to the rights of God.
Governments, right? And people come in and out of that, and God appoints people and takes them out of government. There are people who God deems to become parents and people who God doesn't deem to become parents and things like that. And in the roles that God puts them with, we have a duty to treat them as such, as pertaining to the role. There are different kinds of respect and different
do you understand why I tell stupid ass progressives that they don't have no rights?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
because the framework of Force doctrine, I think, highlights it.
To be fair, everybody made in God's image has rights, whether or not they recognize it or have the right belief system.
Or it should highlight it very easily. I was very disappointed with Tim Pool. Obviously, I'm not, I'm one way or the other with him. But when I saw you trying to reason with him on Force doctrine, and he was talking about what you could do and what you benefit.
So if you want clarification on that, Tim Pool was having a debate on rights and Force doctrine with Andrew. And Tim Pool's take was, well, let's say it's just you alone in the woods and you can take something, you can do something, then you have the right to do something and take something. So his idea of a right seems to be whatever is available to you to do that doesn't violate anybody else, I think, is his idea of a right. The idea that you have the right to lodge somewhere or put a fire together or cook your meat. I guess I don't know. It was just kind of strange, but he would have to understand that if you're an atheist, and I think Tim Pool is an atheist, that force doctrine would be the only thing that would make sense, as Andrew said, as a descriptor of how things work, and not making things morally correct, just making things convenient or inconvenient based on who has the guns or the muscles.
Force
From-
doctrine
it's
is very
irrelevant.
it's very misunderstood because the point of it initially was to point out to feminists that all the rights come from men, and that's actually what's true. The rights all come from men. Now, under the paradigm that you're talking about, if you were to
Rights do not come from men. Yeah, because men. I mean, how do I put it? Rights have to come from God because there's nothing ontologically about men that produces rights for other people, produces rights for women. Rights are an abstract. Men are, we have, obviously, all humans have a spiritual component and a physical component. And, but seeing as that is true for both men and women, rights cannot come from men unless you're adopting some kind of atheistic force doctrine paradigm to prove that, which, I still, it seems like he kind of reset the chessboard a little bit, but he granted my worldview, and then we go back to fundamentally rights come from men. Well, it depends on if you define rights by putting things into law or allowing for certain norms.
ground this and say, there's God-given duties towards women, then those duties infer rights to women. I can make that concession. It just wouldn't change the argument that ultimately all women's rights come from men. Granted,
it might not change the argument for purposes of an atheist who's not going to grant the existence of God, but it seems more in line with the Christian mission to fight for God. And if you're going to use something as abstract and as spiritual, I would argue, as rights to do it, why not take the opportunity? Maybe it's because it would just delve into like different Bible passages and things like that. Maybe he just wants to. It's just the problem is, I think most people have the impression of Andrew Wilson's belief system that he really believes that force doctrine is the bottom line of real truth. And I don't think that's true. I think we should go for the metaphysical idea of what truth is and not just a descriptor of what's going on in the power dynamics on planet Earth.
them.
How would you distinguish that from rights being defended by men as opposed
Actually, let's
to
back that up so I get my
Those
question.
duties infer rights to women. I can make that concession. It just wouldn't change the argument that ultimately all women's rights come from men, granting them.
How would you distinguish that from rights being defended by men as opposed to coming from men? Like like let's say they're by our conscience that
Well,
God
then
gives
you're just
everybody.
appealing to what?
Oh, the conscience.
Force.
What? Okay, but if a right exists in the abstract and is being defended by men, yes, they would use force to defend it, but the defense itself is the recognition of the right in the abstract. The right is not created because somebody defends somebody else. I mean, to even say defend means that there is something worth keeping intact. Such as if you're a guy and you're walking a woman to her car and it's like dark at night, you're defending her, you're defending her safety, you're defending her welfare. That is obviously a reference to her value and her health and the value of her health and all those sorts of things. And it's just so obvious to me that that does not come from men, period, full stop. That's the ultimate basis. It doesn't make any sense to me. It would have to come from God if it's real at all.
You're appealing to force. Rights are defended by who?
Oh, obviously it's the
All right, real quick. Missing Mod says, I agree with him that men could take them if they used force. Men could violate them if they use force. But if you're talking about take them as in remove them from law and say that only protections apply to men now and they don't apply to women anymore, then sure, in a secularist paradigm, that would make sense. But yeah, I agree that I also agree that that probably isn't going to happen. But my main point is when you say them and you refer to rights, are you referring to moral law or civil law, which is the thing I close out on?
duty of men to do that.
Okay,
But that's
so
the
then
that's
for-
the response
So then
to.
who's the grantor here?
when you say the grantor, are you talking
Yeah.
about
So if
God
men
who created
decide,
everything?
if men decide not to defend your rights, do you have any?
Okay, so so if men are the grantor and God is not the grantor, then what happens to men in the eyes of God who don't defend the rights of women? Who's the grantor? Who are we talking about here?
Well, okay, are you talking about civil law or are you talking about moral law?
I'm just saying across the board, if you didn't ground this in God.
Okay, so he says across the board, if you didn't ground this in God, I should have caught that the first time, and I could have probably agreed with him in that framework, but I think I missed it for a couple reasons.
God and the Bible, right? If men don't defend a woman's rights, does she have any rights?
I don't want to get clipped as saying if men don't defend women's rights, does she have rights? Because if as long as the moral law exists in this scenario, then she has rights regardless of whether men do anything or not. So here, give me uno momento. Mod says, well, now I'm feeling different about it. How are you feeling different about it, Mod? Tell us.
That gets complicated in the sense of civil law, moral law distinction.
Well, I'd be willing to get into both those distinctions, but
Sure,
okay.
sure.
Thank you.
And then we end on a handshake. Isn't that wonderful? So, uno momento. I'm going to go over to another debate, which I wanted to, and of course, if you guys have any questions about my debate and my mindset with Andrew, let me know. But I wanted to hit up this debate where I go through my religion speed run real quick.
Anything actually. It doesn't prove really. It doesn't even prove itself.
I'd like.
Now, in my last stream, Riverside crapped out, and I didn't want that to happen. But we're going to try and cover the ground here because there's a lot of good back and forth between me and some atheists on this panel.
To hear the re-examination speed run.
Okay. Can I just do it?
Guys,
I'm gonna try and do it.
Guys, let him go. Let him go. I want to hear.
All right, I want to try and do it quickly and comprehensively as I can without interruption. I'm not trying to filibuster. I'm trying to just be as full as an answer as possible. Is that all right with everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to let
All right, real quick, Mod says, I didn't think about it the way you explain it. Basically, they would be infringing on our God-given rights. Right. Well, if rights aren't something you can hold in your hand or study in a lab, then what are they? And if there's something that can be violated, they belong in the moral law category. So if we just, as men just step back and say, well, let the four winds hit all these women, we're men and we can do that. We don't have a right to do that. We have a duty to step up and defend women in general. Now, again, this is not a white knight thing where we have to like throw ourselves down in the puddle so you can walk across our backs. But in terms of like, if there's a father, got to protect the daughters. If there is a husband, got to protect the wife, things like that. But yeah, rights are not something codified in law. They are something found from God, decrees by God, because of God's character. And especially if marriage is the picture of Christ in the church, then you are failing Christ by not exemplifying what he does for the church in his leadership.
you go.
Okay. So in terms of finding out what religion is true, what belief system is true, it can't be atheism because atheism provides no basis for truth or knowledge whatsoever based on the fact that everything we would be thinking has to do with merely the acts of physics upon chemicals in our brain. So there's no way to know or discover truth from an atheistic framework. Second of all, it can't be a new religion. It can't be something that came about like 5 months ago or 5 minutes ago, because to have no history is to be on the same basis. Because let's say you had the newest religion ever, and then someone made a newer one, and then someone made a newer one. Well, who's to judge if that's true? It has no basis in history. It doesn't resonate with people for most of the time, and you just expect to come on the scene, and everybody's supposed to sign up to your new thing. So it has to go all the way back. And it also can't be a local religion. It can't
Wait, all the way back to when?
Uninterrupted.
Teriak, hold on. Okay. It also can't be some local religion, kind of like what's the Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism is basically the population of Buffalo, New York. It's completely cultural. It doesn't. It might spread a little bit here and there, but it doesn't resonate like the Abrahamic religions, as they call them, would. Also, it can't be any of the Eastern religions, especially when it comes to like any atheistic ones or mystic ones where everything is all one, right? So let's say that you believe in nirvana and you have to achieve nirvana by going through multiple lifetimes of doing the right thing, getting good enough karma to reincarnate into the right thing so you can achieve nirvana. The problem is nirvana is the idea that, or at least in these Eastern religions, of oneness, that there are no distinctions, that everything is one. So if there are no distinctions, I am nirvana, I am the Bhagavad Gita, I am Shiva, I am this, and I am that. So this whole earning thing, it collapses in on itself. So you got the three Abrahamic religions.
You didn't did it correctly, actually. I mean, just one point and that's it.
Let me finish. If I'm doing it wrong, then we'll just wait till I'm done. I'm almost done. And then I will definitely hear your criticism. Okay. So we got the three Abrahamic religions, right? So for Judaism, the Ark of the Covenant is gone. Where are you going to get forgiveness from? If they really believe that forgiveness came from the Ark of the Covenant, then all that's gone. Their whole structure is gone. And Isaiah 64:6 says that our righteousness are as filthy rags. So even the good things we do couldn't satisfy the wrath of God for our sins. We needed Jesus. That's the whole point. Islam is also wrong because it proposes that the Trinity was the Father, the Holy Spirit, and the Father, the Son, and Mary. And that has never been part of any Christian doctrine whatsoever. It was a local cult that was near Muhammad at the time, but it had nothing to do with actual Christianity. So if Allah was actually omniscient God, he wouldn't have made that mistake. So it has to be Christianity. I mean, that's a broad speed run. Go ahead. And now Mod shows me that I was muted earlier. What I was trying to say earlier is I love Teriak. Teriak is a funny guy, cool guy. Go check out his channel, like and subscribe. And please like and subscribe to the Reexamination Show to get more in-depth debates like this. So that's the religion speed run I wanted to give. Let's see. I think I had a point beyond that. Let me see. But it had nothing to do with actual Christianity. So if Allah was... yeah, that's right. So one element I also had to put in there, and this is based partly on Greg Bonson's lectures, but you have to have a scripture that at least claims to be divinely inspired and inerrant, because if you don't make that claim, well, that's just what Confucius says. That's just what Buddha says. How do I know what Buddha says is true? How do I know what Confucius says is true? There's no way to know that. It's just, ooh, we got Mo Rebuttal in the chat. Are you saying that the concept of defending is metaphysical and a particular requirement for the physical manifestation of the force in the first place? I am saying that defending is the duty of the man. The metaphysical part has to do with the obedience. If you are obedient to the point of actually doing your duty in the physical world, then that's the obedience part that God sees and God commands. And it says, and adding a particular requirement for the physical manifestation of the force in the first place. I am not entirely sure what that means. Particular requirement. Obviously, you need force to defend, for sure. If somebody's under attack, you will need physical force to defend that. Just like if you're getting a cyber attack, you will need cyber force to attend that, to defend that. But yeah, I think that your will, insofar as it's like, let's say I have a little bit of an inkling to go to work, but not enough to actually go to work. Have I actually gone to work? No, I have to physically take myself up and go to work to not be a lazy bum and do my duty. So there is a physical aspect to it when it comes to a physical duty that can only be accomplished physically, but the compliance to that is metaphysical in the sense that we are obedient to God from the heart. Actually, omniscient God, he wouldn't have made that mistake. And so it has to be Christianity. I mean, that's a broad speed run. Go ahead, Brian.
It just one little, just a small point is about atheism. Atheism has two versions of atheism. It has the positive and the negative. The positive is an affirmation that there is no God.
Yeah.
Someone who's a positive atheist is going to say there is no God. Someone who's a negative says I don't believe in God.
Yeah,
it's a little bit different.
Here's the problem with both. The problem with both is the one who doesn't know that there's a God is still comfortable with the idea that the universe we experience could exist without a God, and that God is merely an addition that we're tacking on to a sufficient universe. But the problem with that is they have to justify why they think the universe is self-sufficient.
But that's where agnosticism comes, where you say, I don't know. And that's all right to not understand and not.
Yeah, to say I don't know is a defense. The only useful part of the I don't know is the possibility of God. The useless part is the atheism.
To know.
Do they accept that the universe exists, though? If they're atheists, do they accept that the universe exists? Even if they're an I don't know atheist?
Yeah, but I could say that about how a car works. I could be like, hey, I know that a car, if I get in it, I know that I can accelerate, I can brake, I can have forward
Yeah,
movement.
that's just a
and
subset of the natural
it
world.
tells me, yeah, no, but my point being is that I understand.
I remember the argument was made to me once that, well, what if, yeah, maybe you're against homosexuality, but what if it was bisexuality? And it's like the only part of that that works is the hetero part. The gay part is the bad part.
And what a car.
So same thing is true with agnosticism. Agnosticism is like the openness part to God, the part that does not deny God. That's the good part. The part that questions God is the bad part.
Does, but if
Like there's no utility from that.
you don't, but I don't necessarily need to know how the engine works, what oil to put into it, how to maintain it or repair
because
it.
metaphysics
still
aren't
understand
reliant
that the
upon the
car is
existence of your
there.
car.
But the car is
Metaphysics
still
aren't
real.
right, but the metaphysics aren't reliant upon the existence of your car, but metaphysics are reliant upon the existence of God. So it doesn't and also knowing how a thing works is not the same way, it's not the same thing as explaining God away. Like, well, I remember arguments for evolution being like, well, this does this has this effect. It's like, yeah, we observed that having that effect. That doesn't mean that we had one single cell common ancestor every form of life. Check the boxes.
Yeah, the issue I
You
kind of
talk
have
about
having a way.
material versus metaphysics.
Non sequitur.
Well, yeah, but I'm just using that as an example. But I guess
that's still material versus metaphysics. That's a whole different. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so with atheism, if I was hearing you correct, it's basically, and I wrote this down because I was wanting to listen and challenge it. Is that basically atheism doesn't believe in a foundation of where things come from or how they start.
Or
No,
how they even
atheism-
maintain or if
Atheism
they
has
are.
2 points.
Okay,
There
I'm
are
sorry.
two
So they
versions.
maintain or if they are. What if I was to say that it does, but it just doesn't attribute the end conclusion of how it happens to a particular entity or a deity?
Yeah, a lot of times atheists will say, "I don't know," and the presuppositional Christian is going to ask, "How do you know that? How do you know that? How do you know that?" They're going to want to find knowledge and find justifications of knowledge. And what the atheist tends to do is do something quite to the opposite, where they'll be like, they will almost agree, but in a way that advantages them. They'll say, "How do I know that? How do I know that? How do I know that?" And then ignorance will be their best friend because ignorance is going to be their excuse. Hola, hola, ¿cómo está, Bex Factor? ¿Cómo se dice Bex Factor en español? So, yeah, Dillahunty is the master of saying, "How do I know that? How do I know that? How do I know that? How do I know that?" That's their way of saying, "Well, I don't know." Like, for example, if he's asked, what could convince you that the God of the Bible is real? I don't know what would convince me that the God of the Bible is real. Well, that's really convenient. There's no criteria. The criteria is what satisfies you and what doesn't satisfy you. And anything to the affirmative of the God of the Bible would not satisfy you by virtue of you not knowing these things. And the problem is then you can't tamp down what anybody claims to know about anything. And that's why they have maximal certainty as opposed to knowledge, which how do you measure how much certainty you have without knowing what knowledge is?
And they just work off objective facts from what they know currently as science and technology.
Well,
is as
you're
of
importing
today.
a lot with the word objective facts and no. For example, you believe in the law of identity for the laws of logic, right?
Explain that to me.
So the law of identity is a thing is what it is. Oh my gosh, we are going through the matrix. What's going on?
Yeah, laws. Oh, whoa. Yeah,
Click
right.
the wrong button.
Yeah. So law of identity being a thing is what it is. We're probably all familiar with the 3 laws. I mean, there's some that said 4. There's a 4th law of logic that I haven't memorized, but the law of JS Urban Adventures had said there was 12. So, forgive me. I'm not the best read on philosophy. Identity being a thing is what it is. But you recognize that the identity of a thing is not exactly the same thing of itself. For example, this bell. The idea of the bell in my head is not the same thing as the actual physical bell, correct?
Sure.
Right. So it's possible to misidentify. Now, I did make a mistake here because bells are conventions of people. I needed to use something beyond the bell, which is what Brian picks up on. Something. right? Because there's a metaphysical reality of the thing, and then there's the thing itself. Remember those debates about what makes it a chair, what makes it a couch? Human convention is what makes it to sit on. So, what is a sandwich? All that kind of stuff. That's why I want to you got to hit something a little more objective, which is why I hit up on human later on. What is the metaphysical basis by which we identify a thing correctly? So, for example, if I want to identify a human being who has rights and who has conscience and has knowledge and things like that, how would what basis of reality does atheism support the identity of humanity?
Biology.
Well, yeah, I would say that, and furthermore, I could say that I can identify human.
So they say biology, but if you're an evolutionist and you believe that life exists on a continuum of some kind of gradient of different descriptors that we make up, then is there any fundamental difference, any meaningful difference between a human and any animals? And even if you say, well, intelligence, there's intelligence and there's this and that, it's like, yeah, but why does intelligence matter in terms of like identity? If life is just life and it comes in different shapes, but at its core, it's all the same, there's no real ontology for what is a human and what isn't a human, then what gives us rights, what gives us special privileges over others? You ask Destiny, and I don't know what, I can't even make sense of what Destiny's anthropology and value system is. It's what he said in his philosophy video. It's whatever makes him happy, which I think is just a self-defeater, but a non-starter.
And if I can see them, I can touch them, I can speak to them.
Okay. So do humans have rights?
In terms of like from a religious standpoint.
We're talking about atheism right now. Do humans have rights?
Oh, okay.
In society, yes. Society has created.
By the way, shout out to the original Vintage. He's got a great channel. He's a fun guy to talk to. Goes on a lot of cool streams. This is not against him or anybody in the panel for that matter. This is just me reviewing the debate to, clear up any points that I've made that were kind of vague. So, especially when I have a collection of them on these live streams, so I can go back and review them.
In society and government, I would say yes.
So if there's no government, humans don't have rights anymore. You can do whatever you want to people.
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
Okay. Uncomfortable.
That's kind of.
I get that answer because I was expecting.
It's forced to.
I'm kind of playing a bit of devil's advocate here because I'm trying to flesh out where you're coming from. So
right.
I'm
trying to encompass all of reality at once, and what atheists like to do is do one string of reality at a time in a vacuum, and then try and make some kind of cause and effect point or like mere objective physical observation point. But they don't make it cohesive to the entirety of the universe. That's why Christians are trying to make transcendental claims, because bass guitar is getting to the real meat. Is a taco a sandwich? A taco is the closest thing you can get to a sub in Mexico. It's like, look, oh my gosh. That voice is terrifying. Turn that off. A taco is a sub junior. It is a subpar sub junior.
What are you doing there?
Yeah.
I wonder who that was.
The question is, bass guitar, is an open face sandwich a sandwich because it has the word sandwich in the name?
I was trying to do a super chat real quick and I forgot to mute my phone.
That was a soup for something. But yeah, so if you say, oh look, a rock is a rock, I can observe a rock as a rock, can't I? Yes. Well, I'm an atheist, therefore God, I don't need God or whatever. It's like, look, okay, it reminds me again of the flat earthers who say, oh, I don't need gravity, I can stand wherever I want. It's like, okay, the whole point of you standing wherever you want is because gravity exists and assists you to stand wherever you want, which is why we can also say humans have rights because they're made in the image of God, that it's inviolable, it is true of us, that's not true of any other creature, right? And same thing with like moral agency. Like you're not going to say that a shark has moral agency when it attacks another shark. We're not going to talk about like intrinsic shark rights. There's clearly a difference between us as humans and everything else that God has created.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's, I think, and in particular, like scientists, I would guess that the vast majority of the scientific community would be atheists because, or even agnostic to a degree, because they're always trying to ever evolve their understanding, and as they
Well, the thing is, if you're a scientist and the entirety of your understanding is precluded a priori to be materialistic, then a conclusion you could come to is that the educational system is run primarily by atheists. Now, if you think that education is the same thing as the education system, you've made a category error, number one. And number two, it is possible for the institution to be filtering thoughts in and out of your mind in terms of what they want you to think, in terms of practices they want you to adopt. But just because you observe things under a microscope again and again, it doesn't mean that it's less and less likely that God exists, or it doesn't mean it's more and more reasonable to believe that God doesn't exist. It's an ethic. It's a metaphysical belief that that you have, but you attribute it to being a scientist, but there's no actual following that because you're a scientist, you must therefore not believe in God. You have to have already made up your mind that science holds the answers to everything and is all encompassing, aka being a materialist.
learn more and science and technology evolves, they learn new things. My question would be,
Yeah, but again, that's only observing the material all the time. So if you're bedrock,
yeah,
if you've gone
I
to the
understand.
college,
I grant that. I do.
Mhm.
But my question would be then, would someone like yourself who is, does have a religious belief, is there any form of evidence that could be uncovered one day that would ever disprove and have you think, okay, this whole God thing is actually a bunch of nonsense?
if it would, then it would be true, but truth presupposes God, so it would be a self-defeating proposition. So no. But going back
So
to
the
the
answer is
metaphysical,
no.
for
So the
example,
answer is no.
no, exactly. But I wanted to explain with my no. I didn't want to just give you a no, right? I want to at
Yeah,
least
sure. No, that's
at least-
fine.
at least,
I was
you
trying to
know.
let you elaborate. I'm not trying
Yeah.
to trap you or anything.
No, yeah, but like
I'm
go
just
back
about-
to the bell, right? It's like what scientific testing is going to disprove the metaphysical correct understanding of what a bell is according to the law of identity?
Well, I don't know.
It can't.
I mean, what a bell is at the end of the day, it's what people have decided.
No, that is true. A bell is what people have decided because people invent bells and they can, they fashion out of things. That is true. The next part of his argument is not true.
A bell is at the end of the day. Many times we have, for example, let's take.
Okay,
this-
fine. Then let's do humans. Then did people decide what they are, or do they exist and we accept what we are?
We can understand what humans are in the point of biology. We can distinguish a lot of.
Did we assign ourselves our own
No,
identity,
this
or are we
is-
objectively
Yeah.
our own identity?
What is it?
We have
It's
now.
cell.
We have a lot of different names
right?
actually for
The
humans.
trans community,
Like,
for
what is a
example.
cell?
This
That's
sounds
an
like
example.
Bosch's
You
agua,
can't
not
debate
water
that.
argument.
What is a cell? What
It could
is
be
DNA?
incorrect.
Yeah,
Like,
but the thing
DNA
is,
is DNA, and there's no.
the point is,
For example, if we have rights, we didn't decide we have rights. Goes back to force doctrine. Either the rights exist or they don't, regardless of our recognition of them.
you're saying we are not capable
DNA.
ourselves to decide what something is. The point is, we
No,
have been
I'm
doing it all
saying
the
there are
time.
things that are defined
God haven't
for
given
us.
God hasn't given us a guide with all the names, all the explanations, saying this is this, this is this, this is this. They haven't come and said this is a card, this is made of paper, and this will be paper forever. We
Yeah,
have
so you-
decided that this is going to be
you
called
needed
paper.
somebody to hold your hand. for everything.
We're not talking about linguistics. We're talking about identity. That's an entirely different thing. You're like Vosch is famous. Well, he's famous for a lot of things, but one of the
We're-
things that
we're
Vosch was
talking-
famous for is in the trans debate. He was talking to a guy, and the guy was like, "Okay, water. Water is H2O. You're drinking water right now. I'm drinking water right now. Water is
Yeah.
H2O. So, hey, I'm drinking water right now. Scientifically, we understand water to be H2O." And Vosch said, "Well, if you go south of the border, they call it agua, which is a non-point. It's a non-point. The linguistics are
still
completely separate to
water.
the law of identity and a thing being what it is on a metaphysical level, which transcends language.
Laws
That's
of
what I'm
water.
getting at. And humans are a great
Yeah, but
example because
We
we have
have
rights.
decided what
Yeah.
water is going to be. I mean, not linguistically. I mean, the scientific community
Doesn't
has
water
decided
be-
what
Not linguistically. We we have decided what water is going to be. So my mind was blown at that. I don't know how he could we have to, okay. And but he says not linguistically. Could we decide what water is, that water is lead tomorrow? I don't understand this at all.
What
Hey,
water
those-
is going to-
those of you in the chat, give a like and give it subscribe. Please tell me how non-linguistically can we decide what water is or is going to be? I need an explanation, please.
We decided what water was.
We
It
didn't
We
was-
decide-
actually not
Water
even
predates
actually
us.
drinking water.
Water predates us.
we
How
just
did we
use
decide?
a word for it, bro.
Well, all what is
Could I decide what the past is going to be?
named after all, we have
Oh
decided.
no! He's taking me to the
Sorry, 1 second.
basement. Oh no!
Sorry.
Hey,
No,
you
the-
can
Murder
either
is
go to the train
small.
room with Trippy. Oh, you know, it's either this or the train room with Trippy. Pick your poison.
Hey, that's
But no,
hey,
like,
I've hit
straight up, like-
I've hit my max on my max on my budget. There we go. Hopefully we hit the goal.
Water was here before us.
Right.
It was part of how the
Missing Mod says water isn't wet at all. Well, that's what Swords of Reason is for, Missing Mod. You and Bass Guitar can have the ultimate debate to help kick off the rest of 2026. Is water wet?
design happened. Like
That's
it is
also a lot.
part of us, and the only reason you're having a problem
well
with
played,
this
sir.
is because we use terminology to define what water is, but it is still identity that cannot be like it is a thing.
Yeah, so the water, so
A thing distinct from other things.
what the problem is here, right? It's the difference between the ontology and the epistemology going.
I mean, if you want to break everything down and be a full-on materialist, just say everything is protons and electrons and neutrons
On here. So when you're talking about the identity, it's
or waves.
what something is. That's the ontology of water. Water, H2O. It's ontology. Water is how we describe it or categorize it or understand it. So someone saying agua, water, fucking flippity doo da day, it doesn't matter, right? Because it's still the same. The ontology of it is still the same. So that's what we're talking about, right? When it comes to
That's the bingo bell.
the law of identity.
Right. We don't
Water.
decide what reality is. We are subject to reality. We have to accept reality. We cannot change that, which that guy is right. This is why we have a whole
Very-
trans. All right. Mo comes in from 2025. Just to clarify, so duties are metaphysical. I agree, but actualization of said metaphysical duties requires force, or they remain a concept. Trying to understand your comment about force and duties. Yeah, I agree with this. I'm actually trying to figure out where the confusion is. I don't want to be confusing. This is why I do these streams. Yes, the duties themselves are metaphysical. I would argue spiritually, specifically when you're talking about metaphysical, they're not the laws of logic per se. I agree, but actualization, yes, the actualization is there, but the actualization is the consequence of somebody following the duties that they have in light of who God is and God's rights to tell us what to do. Please bring more of your questions. Debate in
True.
the first place.
Very true, but the understanding of what that
And
is
this just has to do
can
with
change and
Teriak's
evolve.
feet. So we're going to move on from Teriak's feet. Right,
Over
but
time.
that's only here's the thing. If people's understanding changes, does that mean we're getting closer to the truth or further from the truth or lateral movement? The point is the truth
I
stays
don't
the
know.
same regardless of what our understanding is. Now, the reason I brought this up is because Original Vintage was saying that it's not a good example to bring up flat earthers. And I said the reason I brought up flat earthers is because the Scientific American a few years back said that people, like a quarter of people under 25, were not sure what the shape of the earth was. And the reason I brought that up was because he talked about people's perceptions being an important factor in knowing things of some sort. It's been a while.
Yeah,
Okay,
I agree.
real quick example.
Like-
Okay,
like
so
flat
the
Earth is-
sun, the Earth revolves around the
That's a
sun.
different thing,
right?
because
That's
they're
true,
same.
correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flat Earth
Rel-
has been
relative to
Will
our
one
solar
sec.
system model.
Will that always be true?
One sec. Okay, so this was a tricky question because in my theology, we're going to have a new heavens and a new earth after Christ comes back. And so, as far as will the earth always revolve around the sun, in that particular case, I don't know, because when I hear always, I think eternally and how that's going to work in the future. I do not claim to know. He might have been working through his colored pencils that day. Vosh himself might be a painter of sorts. He might be an artist. Who knows? But yeah.
Unless it stopped.
I'm thinking
like millions of years from now.
I'm trying to remember.
No,
if
to get at
Human
let
beings
me
will
explain.
always have the same ontology that they do right now.
That's right.
Yeah, see, flat Earth is a bit of a poor argument.
That's a better way to go about it, right?
It looks like I
Because,
explained about here.
revolve-
Sometimes things change, or whatever we're going to revolve around. I mean, I believe there's going to be a new Earth when Christ comes back. But I'm sorry, what was the last thing you said?
Oh, I was just merely saying that I thought that your example there of flat Earth.
Oh yeah.
And there's some proof that there's something there.
Let me
but
tell you
there's
why
not
I
enough
brought up
proof
flat Earth.
that they can get over.
I already
the
told
edge
you why I
to
brought it
this,
for so we can move on.
So it's ever evolving. So,
But the truth is not
agnostic
evolving, right?
But
Well,
the thing is,
fact is
a little
evolving,
bit it
therefore
is.
it's
I mean,
evolving.
let's just take let's just take 1 second the most fundamental truth for Christianism, the Bible.
The most fundamental truth. Oh wait, I think this is before it goes off the rails. Well, hold on, before you get to that, I want to address his point about flat Earth because the reason I brought it up is because a few years ago that's not important. Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
I also think that people have the right to be wrong.
Nobody has the right to be wrong. If my kid was going in for brain surgery and I hear the surgeon before putting on his gloves and saying, "I have the right to be wrong," I'd be like, give me a new doctor. If I see my lawyer and then he's like, "Well, I got the right to be wrong," before we go into a case, give me a new lawyer. Okay. Nobody has the right to be wrong. Everybody has the duty to be right. Everybody has the duty to do the best thing that they possibly can with their lives, gather as much relevant information within a reasonable amount of time, and do what they're supposed to do with the time, resources, and brains they've been given. But you don't have if you don't have a right. How could you have a right to be wrong? If I have a right to be wrong, then don't I have a right to violate somebody's rights in the sense of being wrong about what rights are? If I say that human beings have rights and somebody else says human beings don't have rights, do they have the right to be wrong? Can both of those rights exist at the same time? It just seems internally incoherent to say you have a right to be wrong, because then you could be wrong about every ethical standard and every ethical claim too.
The right to be wrong? What the fuck is that even?
Yeah, so you have the right to think what you want to think, but you
just,
could be wrong.
I would not even say you have the right to think what you want to think necessarily, because if you have the right to think what you want to think, let's say you're a teacher in a school and then you want to teach somebody else's little kids all your stuff. And then you teach them flat earthism, you teach them Scientology, you teach them reptilianism and all kinds of crazy crap. If you have the right to think a certain way, but you don't have the right to actually say what you think, then I would argue you don't have the right to be wrong, because you are prevented from acting on your wrongness. You would have to say that I get it that there's no you have the right to not have people brainwash you and try and tell you what you Let's put it this way. As far as the methodology of giving truth to people, there are right ways and wrong ways to do that. But I don't think anybody who I don't think there's any serious metaphysic that gives you the right positively to go on being wrong. I think there's a reason we have these debates to sort out what the truth is. I think there's a reason we have reasoning and logic to give us tools to figure out what is right or wrong. I don't think there's any profession out there outside of maybe an artist where you could say I have the right to be wrong.
Because
Like the human
obviously,
right, and even then, I would say there has to be ethics with art too.
this guy can't get enough. Just give me 1 second, Jack. I'm just gonna chop you down for 1 second here, buddy, because we're at full capacity.
Oh.
Look who.
And this is the part where it goes off the rails. We're going to the next discussion. Now, this is a man named Shiva. Those of you who are Christians, keep Shiva in your prayers, also known as the irritating nihilist. So this is Shiva's icon right here. Very trippy. Looks like it came from an adult coloring book. But Shiva is a British atheist, I want to say. and went on a panel about abortion. And when I heard what he was saying, and I saw my buddy and compatriot Rev Russ over here, and he was spouting philosophical stuff, I knew I wanted to jump in and give my 2 cents. But yeah, as I heard from Teriak's stream this morning, Shiva is going through some bad stuff. I haven't gone through it, but keep Shiva in your thoughts and prayers. And hopefully, anyway, this gets contentious, I would say, between me and Shiva. There's some back and forth, but there's no ill will here.
You're all wonderful, and I'll keep watching.
All right, have a great night. Thanks for coming.
So I don't think I heard what Shiva said before I came in here, but it doesn't take me too long to get in.
Bye, guys.
W's in the chat for base grandma.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Uno momento. El Bex Factor. Oh, I lost my face. There's my face. People who want to philosophize too much about what is right and wrong and what is wrong, what is right and what is wrong, tend to be people who want to get away with doing wrong things. Yes. Yeah. Obviously, people who are like, but is it really wrong? Is it real? I mean, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, what if you look at it this way? Like if I say killing is wrong, and then the person has said, well, I mean, is it always wrong? Lying is wrong. Well, is it always wrong? It's like, look, dude, everybody knows what I mean. Don't kid yourself.
Ghosty, would you say you're a utilitarian? What do you base your morals on?
Poor Ghosty. Well, she was on there's Mo. Is Mo still in the chat? I wonder if Mo's still in the chat. There you are. So Ghosty had the privilege of being surrounded by right wingers. So she handled it decently well. She's a trooper,
Because it sounds like you're a utilitarian.
I might be. I kind of am. I kind of go back and forth between that and consequentialism.
Yeah. So that's really what we're running into here, with everybody else on the panel and yourself. We have certain moral frameworks we abide by, and you clearly are utilitarian, which allows for this kind of demonic, evil worldview that allows over 1 million murders a year in the U.S. Every time I talk to you progressive types,
I thought we were avoiding personal attacks.
And every time I talk to you progressive types and we talk about this issue, we went down to the heartbeat, okay, then the personhood. And it's always this extra little thing that they're used to justify, basically just avoiding responsibility and just justifying wholesale murder on children. So that's I don't really see. I've never heard an argument that actually makes any fucking sense, that actually follows through logically to any other scenario that I give them. So I don't understand, even yourself, you said you don't even have a definition of personhood. So you're just sitting here as a talking head for left-wing progressive talking points, and nothing we say will convince you otherwise because you are brainwashed with this.
No, I
that's
disagree.
the reality. No, that's the reality.
I'm not gonna...
Everyone could be saved.
I didn't say anything about save. I never made a claim about her soul.
Uno momento. So, Bex Factor, when you look into intellectual honesty, you'll find that people arrive to truth together better when they are acting in kind and good faith. They have already decided what their basic ethics are. It can depend on the dominant culture. It might influence your understanding of basic ethics and have agreed upon them. Maybe, maybe not. I mean, there are obviously bad societies out there. I don't have to list them for you. Not to derail the stream, but I have questions about God and creation. That may derail the stream depending on how complicated they are. I am just trying to review some of my debates, but you can still bring it in, obviously. Uno momento.
Type. I actually have.
Yeah, well, we
No,
can
you
start
are.
independent beliefs.
You are.
The problem is a lot of people try to go that deep, and I don't even think it's that deep. That's why I was trying to. Ghosty, let me ask you a question. Do you believe in humans came from the process of evolution?
Oh, and yeah. So if you want, obviously you can message me in Discord. No problem with that.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, yeah. I'm just trying to find out where you're actually like the things that you believe and the ideas that you.
She's a utilitarian, man.
Have or get
whatever
actually come from.
Mo, you remember how I went with Shiva, right?
Yeah, but she's not, because if you were like, it's really good utility to like have slaves, she automatically goes, no, slaves bad. So
Well,
it's like,
I never
actually
said it
don't
was a
have-
coherent worldview. Utilitarianism is dog shit, but
that's
she was
why-
subscribed
Okay,
to
well,
it.
yeah. So it's like
I'm not like
there's something else.
conceding to being like a full utilitarian, whatever. But like, I understand some of those, some of that logic. But
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense logically.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, I forget what I was gonna say now.
I apologize.
I just
and
don't-
I'm trying to help. Yeah, I'm trying to help, trying to clarify because I think a lot of people, are trying
Stop
to go
being.
all-
So if God, so basically Tara asks, so if God exists outside of time, doesn't that imply that creation coexists with God? How can God exist before creation? What does before mean without referencing time? Yeah, so God does not need any natural containments or natural, oh, where's my face? Whoop. God is self-sustaining. However, we are not, right? So it goes into whether you believe in A theory or B theory of time. Time, I think, is an expression of God's establishment change in its order and in its sequence. And so because time expresses itself in creation, God has a will and is self-sustaining of his own and does not require an external contraption like time in order to initiate his will. If you want to say creation coexisted with God, that's not true because matter is not eternal and is not personal and does not have a will. However, God does have a will. So if you want to say that God knew that he was going to create something and at one point he did and another point he did not, then yes, you could say that the idea of it was there, but creation itself was not there manifestly. So that's one way I would talk about that. Oh, LOL Mo. And more LOLs for the Mo.
And stop trying to be Captain Save-A-Ho.
I still don't even know what's your
I'm practicing my devil's advocate.
logical reason.
And no, I don't know what it's like existing outside of time, so I can't speak to that. But I don't think that anybody expected me to.
And for being pro-life, besides you value it and I don't.
You don't value life.
I don't
No,
value
I think she's
life under a
caricaturing-
certain age and development.
But are you pro death penalty?
I'm kind of interested in that question as well. What is the basis against which you people are against abortion?
The basis that I'm against.
Now, remember, Shiva, aka the irritating nihilist, is an atheist. I think he's playing devil's advocate here, but he is also like it says nihilist. So does not believe in moral realism.
I am pro-death penalty. Yes.
Outside of my theological views, is the fact that the Yazis used it as a primary instrument in their eugenics program, and it only gained popularity after World War II.
Okay.
Especially in the United States. It is a form of eugenics. Eugenics is a
Right.
very slippery slope that leads to major atrocities. We saw one with the same group of people that I had mentioned. So
Right.
when we give human life a subjective value,
As
then
opposed to
very
an
bad
objective
things
value.
can, yes, very bad things can happen.
And what is the objective value of a human life?
The objective.
That is a great question. That comes up later.
The valuable is the inalienable human rights given to them by their creator. Life,
What's that?
liberty, pursuit of happiness. It's
And what
codified
is
in
that?
our founding documents.
Oftentimes, atheists will ask you to answer a spiritual question or a metaphysical question within a physical paradigm, as if you do something morally good or bad, somehow the receipt is going to print out and give you morally bad balance, morally good balance. This is what happened. This is an objective writing of whether it was good or bad, and that's not how that works. And nobody has claimed that it does work that way in some kind of testable, repeatable report function you get in a spreadsheet in Excel.
What is not in my founding documents? What is the creator?
The creator is God Almighty.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
right.
I
Okay,
knew
great,
this
great,
guy.
great.
Reverend Russ is correct.
So
I
you
just
see,
had a
that
quick-
is our objective basis for our moral oughts.
So in order for
Mo, I got a question for Mo.
in order for it to be objective, so
I was driving back in the car from work listening to this on a late night, and I'm like, I'm all hyped up. I got to get in on this.
so is your view that you're operating from an objective moral position, that your moral position is objectively true?
Mm-hmm.
I would say that
Great.
in the
Excellent.
case of an objective,
Maybe.
an objective worldview,
If I could understand that
takes-
question, I might have to speak up a little bit, Shiva.
I can probably turn myself up a bit. Hang on a second.
Hey, coming in a little mumbly, and I don't want to like.
Well, I mean, yeah. Also,
I want to catch your full question and give you the best answer possible, of course.
Later on, he won't be needing to turn his mic up.
My voice is a little
I
bit.
do hear him clearly, if on my end at least, but.
Well, listen, boys, you gotta let each other finish speaking, then you can hear everything more clearly. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can remember.
Just to say,
I got. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
well,
easy,
I'm sure you did.
I get. No. I'm. Hey, man. Come
I'm
on,
being rude. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no. I get it. I apologize. I have to go though because
All
I
right.
have children to take care of. But
Heard
anyway,
Mo, you back down in a fight? I thought it was not one step back.
I'll take care, guys. Pleasure. Later.
People know about him that you deem to be people somehow.
Wait, what?
That you deem to be people.
Yes, they are people.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
they are people.
I deem them as
yes.
people too. Wow, isn't
No,
that crazy?
Who gets the murder
Off the people.
charge? The doctor or the lady? Oh, dang it. That was the only one I had.
Right. So I suppose the question that I'm trying to get at is, what is it that makes abortion wrong? Like fundamentally.
Well, it's the termination of human life, and I think we can all agree that killing is wrong, right? Murder is wrong.
No, we cannot agree that.
No, we cannot agree that killing is wrong or murder is wrong. I can't even I listen to that and it's like I know it's convenient philosophically to say that there are no moral oughts, there are no moral laws. Nobody lives like that. Nobody, I mean, if Shiva votes, then Shiva doesn't live like that. If anybody who says they're a more relativist gets mad at Trump and says he's a bad guy, which, you know, is true that he's a bad guy, you know, I think he's less bad than the Democrats, then I mean, you're still making a moral judgment. I think this only comes up in philosophical debates for the purpose of keeping your conscience at bay. I think that's the only reason that actually comes up. But yeah, I want to ask all these people who are moral relativists, do you vote?
Okay, so if you're going to say that murder is wrong, objectively, what you're saying is that actions have either one of two properties, right? The property of ought to be done or ought not to be done, right? Would you agree?
Well, yeah, I would say that murder ought not be done.
Okay, great.
Murder, of course, is a loaded term of unjustified killing as opposed to killing being a neutral term. Killing can be justified or unjustified. That comes up later. And then there's, I don't know, do we have a positive term for killing? You know, yippee or something?
Which would then make, have you heard of an Australian philosopher called J.R. Mackie?
Nope. I don't know philosophy too well. Even though I won the one PK on the philosophy night, it is not my strong suit.
Congrats, Rev.
So he has this argument called the argument from queerness. Queerness, him being related to the word odd or weird, not related to sexuality. And so I
wonder on what level an atheist gives the metric of queerness or weirdness. I wonder, it's like what should be considered normal by people to officially tell you what is queer or weird or out of the norm. I don't even know how they define a norm.
He makes the argument that if morals were objectively true, like facts about the universe, then it would make them really like strange phenomena, because they would have properties that we don't observe anywhere else in the universe. No.
So, like, is that supposed to prove something? Is it not possible for something to have properties in one part of the universe that is not a property of something anywhere else in the universe? How is that an argument? How is that? What gives you the idea that it is impossible for a universe to contain something that is not anywhere else? It's just localized to one spot, right? I mean, this happens on Earth with certain kinds of species, like most marsupials. Most are in Australia. Also, if you want to believe in the multiverse, then you believe that only our universe is the way it is, and other universes are distinct from them in maybe key ways. If you imagine that the multiverse is true, I don't see the argument here.
We don't like the sun doesn't have a property that says it ought to shine or ought not to shine. It's just a process, right? So he says that on that ground, they're kind of metaphysically queer, but they're also epistemologically queer, because if these properties did exist, we would need a faculty by which we could perceive them. And we can't identify that faculty, right?
Well, it's the assertion that we can't identify that faculty. We have a conscience, so we can tell what's going on in our conscience in terms of what's right or wrong. We have to distinguish that from our feelings. But to say that we can't identify it is to beg the question of, is everything material in its essence?
Yes, but just because it's unfathomable doesn't make it illogical, does it?
Well, it's not about whether it's logical, it's about whether it's true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because things can be logical and not physically possible, right?
How does something being unique preclude it from being true?
Like the statement, I can jump to the moon, is logically possible. Like, it's flawless, logically. It's just not physically possible.
Yeah, you're talking about cogent and sound now.
Maybe not yet.
Would you be basing your, I'm guessing your philosophy on the fact that you can only base, I guess, base phenomenon in life based on their physical attributes and only their physical attributes, how they interact physically with the world? Nothing.
No, I'm.
Why would you not? Why would you not go based on? Why would you not?
Because I'm not a materialist.
You're what?
Because I'm not a materialist.
So I wonder how Shiva's not a materialist. If you're looking for material justifications for metaphysical truths, then how are you not a materialist?
So I don't hold the view that our consciousness is material. I mean, it could be.
But
I kind of don't hold a view on it. So
but you're arguing that the existence of certain factors like objectivity is physical.
No.
So
okay, that's not what I said. Okay, so I used the sun as an analogy. That wasn't meant to imply that morals are a kind of physical substance.
Well, you used a non-moral agent to try and make a moral comparison. I don't see how that's helpful.
Right.
But you argued it from a physical standpoint in that
because
there's a physical component.
Okay, fine.
There's a physical component that can't be, I guess, ignored with that sort of thing.
Well, it's just that, like, we're ascribing properties either ought to be done or ought not to be done. In this case, to the act of abortion, right?
You have to prove why that is wrong. I mean, you could say, oh, you're shifting the burden of proof, and you're saying that certain things are right and wrong. The problem with that is you go back into the infinite regressive value, which says if you're going to correct me about wrong thinking, then I could ask you what gives right thinking value over wrong thinking, and the contrary. Now, you could say that I benefit from it. Well, what is benefit? What gives benefit value? Let's say that we live in an atheistic universe. Nobody goes to heaven. Nothing is right. Nothing is wrong. How does that make any difference anywhere if I live or not?
And we're saying,
if you want to say I get utility from knowing true things and I live longer and I have a happier life, what gives my happiness value? What gives my life value if God doesn't exist? If Christ didn't die for my sins? You know, what are we talking about?
Or at least it seems like you guys are saying it is objectively true that abortion ought not to be done.
All right, and this is where it gets a little more interesting.
And now, to me, that seems like quite a bold claim, because you're making a statement about the nature of actions, and it's a statement that doesn't seem to it's non-verifiable, right? There's no way that I can tell whether abortion is wrong or not.
Re-examine.
Back in those days, I had the camera angle up my nostrils, and now I can't unsee it. Hey, question. Can you tell
what is a lie and what is not?
Yes.
How
Okay.
can you do that?
Sick.
By comparing the proposition, say it is raining, to the available evidence.
Well, that's not a lie necessarily. That may be an untruth. That's
Well,
not a
true,
lie.
true. I mean, yeah,
That would
okay.
be- that would be
All right, yeah,
moral-
okay.
moral
Maybe
culpability.
if someone said I didn't take the £10 note, but I saw them take the £10 note or
That would be a lie?
$10 note, yeah.
So that's moral culpability. So that's
No,
moral-
no.
Okay, so you incur exactly 0 moral culpability for lying, according to Shiva. That was a shock to me, but especially somebody who would want to say that religion was a lie or that Christianity was a lie. And that would mean, and then you don't. Does that mean you can't condemn it? And if you did condemn it, why would you condemn it if nothing wrong happened?
No,
Yes.
no, I'm not saying lying is wrong. I'm just saying I'm aware that you said something that doesn't accord with reality.
Okay, so but
That's all.
if I intentionally say something that doesn't accord with reality, then it's not wrong.
Is it wrong on your view?
Not a lie.
Answer the
No,
question.
he's asking you.
Uh,
Yeah, he's
I'm
asking
Oh,
asking you.
I don't think morals exist.
Okay,
I
so
think
he-
we
So he wouldn't commit to the idea that saying something you know to be untrue is not wrong because you can just retreat back to I don't think morals exist. Does the world need more of that, or does the world need more of Christ?
determine what's right and wrong.
So if I say
real quick re-examination, sorry, real quick before you guys continue that, I just want to read a couple of the super chats before they pile up.
Sure.
We had $5 from Carrie, said, ask Ghosty about
He's
We're just gonna skip ahead
work.
on that
So,
one.
but she started because she
shut up. All right, and we got
First memory.
as far back as I can remember, I've like talked to my mother. I was just on the road.
my outfit on or something, but I just remember getting everyone.
In
Oh
all
my
of
gosh.
the, and this was my
Takes a while to get there.
Warning. The information shared in these conversations and videos are
You value it.
I use the sun. So can
wrong, and you ought to say right.
Oh my
It's like
God.
a flash. It's just like
My bad, you guys. My
those
bad.
flashes. Of
One thing
memories.
specifically, like I remember getting in a lot of trouble because I was running out in the road,
I should
and I
have a
was
more
3 years
precise
old,
mouse.
and somehow I escaped out the door. I'll tell.
It's tragic. No, but
And then we got hours.
Uno
That
momento.
is probably
You can come on.
Discord is safe for that.
All right, here we go,
he
here we
said
go.
he's spurging in the break room, so he must be working. So he's like,
Yeah,
come on.
He's on the job at the moment.
Welcome, Vigilante and Teriak as
Oh
well.
man, here we
Welcome.
go. All right, so this begins the part of the is-ought problem that Shiva wanted to get into.
Party.
hello,
Now
Vigilante,
real
hello,
party.
correct.
We got some
Before
more
we
people
seven
on
right now.
the opposite side here. I like it. I like it.
Hey,
Yeah,
Ghosty.
so
So
for
before we
everyone-
get hang on, before we get
here we
sidetracked,
go.
before we
Okay.
get sidetracked,
Now,
I
because I picked the fight with Shiva, now it is on.
would like us not to be deflected from my critique of your position, which is where are you deriving the I'm so glad that Elderline made that comment. Where are you getting the ought from?
Yeah, so because
Force.
Force. No, it wouldn't be force. We already went over that early in this live stream. It is not force. No. So because truth is a person, we know truth is a person because
No,
of the existence
we
of
don't
moral
know
laws.
that.
We do. And
No,
one of the
no,
rea- and-
no, I
and-
don't. No.
Okay, then back to force.
We know in our conscience that God has made himself revealed to us. That goes back to Romans 8 again. Romans 1:18. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. So even if you don't want to admit that, that's what's going on. Oop, we are on this debate now.
I can explain my position, or we can just say yes
Sure.
and no. on
Okay.
that.
All right. Okay. Go on. Go on. I mean, maybe
All right.
if you use the word "I know."
So for example, when you said no, what you were saying was you're wrong and you ought to say right things. You ought to believe correctly.
Well, no, I was just saying that you were including me in the statement "we," right?
Yeah, but we have to. So why would you stop me from doing that if we ought not to say right things?
So is that wrong to say things that are incorrect?
What morally wrong?
There you go. The end.
What you
No,
said
I'm
more.
not thinking
So I didn't realize that the tone of voice didn't sound like a question to me, but they tell me that she was asking the question, not answering to it.
I'm asking a clarifying question.
I think when re-examination said we,
Yeah,
was
I
talking
think.
about
Wait,
reflective
wait. I think
associated
he was
worldview.
asking though. He's asked you if it was morally wrong.
Oh,
Like, I'm
morally
asking a
question mark.
clarifying
Okay, so
question.
he's asking
Got it.
me. Well, yeah,
Yes.
I mean, yeah. Well, I think that's the problem. Is I think it's clear to both of us that lying is objectively morally wrong. Otherwise,
No.
we wouldn't be debating the point.
No,
Otherwise,
no.
we wouldn't be debating the
Stop,
point.
no, look, re-examination. This will go a lot easier if you stop telling me what I think and
Is
believe.
it wrong to tell you? what you
I'm not
think?
doing it.
I'm sorry, but the position is just so absurd. He's only getting upset because he regards it to be an affront to him that I would tell him what he thinks. The whole point of this exercise is to show him that he believes that morality is real, whether he likes it or not.
To you, so I would ask that you just extend me the same courtesy, if that's all right.
But I
He asked the question.
Yeah, but the problem is the entire enterprise of debate is based on honesty and assessment of true
Agreed.
facts, which honesty is a moral enterprise.
No, it isn't. It's a
Dishonesty
factual
is, how the honesty is not merely a factual enterprise. You can be honestly wrong. You can truly believe. Heck, if honesty was a factual enterprise, then everybody who believes that God is real is right because they're honest. That doesn't make any sense. Morally
Surprised.
wrong.
Is
Dishonesty
it?
is morally
Okay,
wrong. Yes.
great. Why is it morally wrong?
Because it's against God, and we know that it's against God.
Which
because
one?
Bad
Which
move,
one?
examination.
The problem is Shiva doesn't know that I know the religion speed run. And so because I argue not from the existence of a hypothetical God or a propositional theoretical God that holds a placeholder for my epistemology, that I can actually narrow it down from why it can't be new religions, why it can't be Eastern religions, why it can't be tiny religions, why it can't be religions where, their prophet is some guy who just made up a thing and it never came to pass ever in the time frame that they gave that thing. Excuse me. You know how it is when you have vegetables for lunch.
Which God? Okay, is abortion morally wrong because it's against God?
Correct.
Yes.
So can we then extrapolate from that killing babies is morally wrong because it's against God?
And then he goes into the Amalekites. So the Amalekite example would have to do with the judgment of the adults. So you take the adults off the table, then it comes down to the kids. And obviously in war, when you're taking over a nation, obviously horrible things happen. War is horrible. War was not what God made the world for. War is a product of sin in a sinful world. And when it comes to killing of babies, yes, when we talk about killing of babies being wrong, we talk about it in terms of like some guy walked down the street, hopped inside a window, and then killed a baby. But what we don't talk about is if God owns everything and God determines the length of your life, then the circumstances are irrelevant of how you died because God's not morally obligated to somebody above himself in order to complete that action. However, we are morally obligated to abide by the moral laws that God has set for us, right? So and then people want to say, well, what if God told you to kill a baby? It's like, are you talking about an ectopic pregnancy? Are you talking about, things like that? Like, are you talking about something? That's why I go to justified or unjustified when it comes to killing. Murder is unjustified killing because we
Can you answer?
for
Can you
example-
just no? Can you answer these specific? Wait. No, can you
Because
answer the
killing is an
specific?
imprecise word. Killing is an imprecise word. Okay, so I'm wrong here because killing is the precise word for the institution. Killing is the precise word for the situation at hand. Because the question I'm being asked is there ever a morally justified way to kill a baby? That's what he's getting at. So if I'm going to answer that question, I have to be the one to say if it's always wrong or if it's sometimes acceptable. Ectopic pregnancies would be one of those examples where it would be acceptable because the fallopian tube is now inhabited by an implanted baby. The baby is not coming out, and the mother is going to die along with the baby in all likelihood. So even though there are people who say, well, we try and say both. Yeah, that has happened. That can happen. But in that case, there is a strong and solid self-defense scenario for killing a baby. in that case. And then people, here's where Ghosty messed up with her question that opened the door for both me and Shiva, but then it got to God's ownership of everything.
It's very precise. Can you answer these specific
No, it's
questions
not
I
a
asked?
precise word because you have
Is-
to again, I'm wrong here.
Is
You have to
the
differentiate-
slaughtering of babies wrong because it's against God?
It is the precise word. The slaughtering of babies.
Yes.
So, okay, so when you say slaughtering of babies, you're talking about unjustified killing or justified killing?
Just answer the question, yes or no. Is it wrong?
Okay, so
the context would be is it justified or unjustified? That's the good
Right.
context because
Oh, right. Okay. Is it ever? One sec. Shiva, let me say. Is it ever? One sec. One sec.
Their objection would go something like this: if God told you to kill a baby, would you do it? And there is no such mandate within Christianity. And also, the closest thing you would have would be when God had told Abraham to kill Isaac, make an altar, and then sacrifice Isaac, which he was prevented from doing because that was an illustration of Christ, right? Here's how that worked. So God told him to take his son, his only son, and to sacrifice him. And then Abraham believed that God would have what was it? That God would provide a way or provide a sacrifice. He said God would provide a sacrifice. And it's not clear whether or not Isaac had submitted to that or was resistant to that, or when it came down to the sacrifice part. But the point is that God did not require a mortal sacrifice for this. In fact, God provided a lamb. God sent an angel to say, stop and don't do it. And the test was not so that God could know what's in you. The test was to know what if you know what's in you. And so but as far as mandates of God telling people to kill babies, that's nowhere in the Bible. The canon is closed. Revelation 22 says that if anyone adds to this book, so shall the plagues be added unto them, and if anyone takes away from this book, so shall their name be blotted out of the book of life. So you don't have a case for that within Christianity. Anybody who claims that God said I just should go into a nursery and kill a baby is obviously a psycho.
One sec. Is it ever justified? I was asking, is it ever justified, Shiva?
This is called moral outrage.
Where does the justification come from, though?
We are having a discourse here, and oh fuck, I've lost my train of thought.
No, Shiva, is it ever justified? Ask him, is it ever justified to slaughter babies?
No, thank you. Is it ever justified to kill a baby?
It depends on whether or not you have a justification or not.
I'm asking you, is there ever a justification?
Yeah, he's right. He was asking me. I needed to be quicker on that.
That
would depend on some moral
on your
context.
view.
You have to give me a moral context.
I don't know. Say
holding a gun.
God orders
Say if someone told
the
you
certain
to.
people to kill all
Say
the
if
men,
someone
women,
told you
children.
to. Say if someone just told you to.
Again, even if you wanted to use the example of Israel killing the Amalekites, that would be within the context of war. And the closest you would have would be Isaac and Abraham and Isaac. And even then, it doesn't feel quite as bad because it's not a baby, but it would be, human sacrifice obviously does not satisfy the wrath of God. And God obviously judged many nations for sending their babies through the fire. So it's obviously not in the character of God to express that he disapproves of sending your baby, sacrificing your babies, and then to say, well, what if that was a God of the Bible? Well, it's not.
And for what reason?
What if God told you to?
So
What if
for
God
what
told you to
reason would
murder a
that-
baby? Would you murder?
So I latched onto that because she said murder. Murder is by definition unjustified killing. So that's how I can go to 1 John 3:15. 3:15, I want to say.
Hang on. So there is a context.
Because 3:15 says he who hates his brother is a murderer, meaning unjustified
Right.
killing. We know no murderer has eternal life in him. Therefore, because it contradicts the character of God, that's an incoherent scenario. Now, so I end there because she used the word murder. Murder is a qualification of a killing. It is not the justification of a killing. So let me look up real quick because I think there's a passage about passing through the fire for babies in the Bible. Yeah, there it is. Leviticus 18:21, and thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Moloch, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy God. I am the Lord. There shall be Deuteronomy 18:10. There shall be not found among you anyone that maketh his son or daughter to pass through the fire, or that useth divination, an observer of times, or enchanter of a witch? 2 Kings 16:3. But he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, yea, made his son pass through the fire, according to the abominations of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel. So if you want proof positive that baby sacrifice is not permitted, there you go.
Okay, great. And what does it say about people who harm innocents? I think that might be in the New Testament. It says that. Okay, great. And what about 1 Samuel 15? Easy knew I was going here.
that wouldn't be innocent because we all deserve hell.
Me too.
So
Infants are not innocent.
Yeah, on a cosmic level, we all deserve hell. As far as babies, there are good arguments out there that I won't get into right now about babies going to heaven before the age of accountability, which is age of accountability is a controversial view. I could go one way or the other on that. It's up to God, but I know that babies in themselves are ignorant, and it would be hard to really establish they have a sin record without knowledge of good and evil to the extent that an adult would have, or even a child who knows what they're doing is wrong when they do it. It does not work according to the Bible.
Infants are not innocent.
That is not a problem with the gospel. So even in Shiva's worldview, infants aren't innocent. So I don't know why he's upset.
Infants are not innocent.
Because innocent is a moral category, and if morality isn't real, then moral categories aren't real. According to who?
According to you. I'm asking you.
Where did I say it? And then I made the defensive move at this point of asking, where is it according to me that I said anything about the innocence or guilt of babies? Now, it was more of a technical move. It had nothing to do with my position, because it's not entirely clear. If you have original sin, it's not entirely clear what counts as full innocency. According to you, and I'm asking you, which one?
The citizens of Amalek.
I'm asking you, which one?
Which one what?
You said according to you, and then you switched to I'm asking you. Which one is it? Which Patrick are you talking to? Hello? Get all irritated. See, here's the thing.
Wait, stop. I am getting irritated. That's not to do with you.
It's okay. I can't imagine. Here's the problem. The whole reason you're asking this scenario is because you know in your conscience it's morally wrong. Otherwise, you'd be asking any sort of thing. Why did you pick that one?
I don't.
Why
no,
did you
I
pick
don't.
That one then?
So here's the question: if it's against God to have an abortion, then why did God?
Okay, so the equivalent of killing the Amalekites is having an abortion because you want to keep your beach bod. I don't understand the equivalence here. This is like, oh, is it always wrong? And then they go to like grape and incest and things like that. And like I said earlier in the stream, it's like if you're trying to use outliers to justify all cases, just don't use the outliers. Just say it's justified in all cases. Don't use this kind of backdoor logic.
Command the Israelites to slaughter a whole bunch of babies.
Does God own everything?
No.
No.
And this was this moment he knew he screwed up. According to who?
Me.
Oh, good job. Okay. Let's hear that again.
God to have an abortion, then why did God command the Israelites to slaughter a whole bunch of babies?
Does God own everything?
No.
Now okay. He went from internal critique and retreated to external critique and say no. So he went from, I'm going to use inside the Bible, I'm going to use internal material to dismantle the Bible. Then when I ask him if God owns everything, and he says no, he has retreated. He retreated from his argument, left his post, and went right back to atheism.
No.
According to who?
Me.
Oh, good job. Okay.
So this goes into, are you the
what do you think?
No, this is the whole we're supposed to.
Do you think God owns everything? Do you think God owns everything? Do you think God owns everything?
I don't ask you what God thinks.
Does God own everything?
I was actually curious how he would go next with does God own everything? And because if God owns everything and can do anything he wants to do with any of his creation, what does an atheist do from there? That's property rights. What do you do?
So wait, are you talking about the Amalek, right? Hang on, because hold on, now we're getting into my strikes.
I had a question for
you. Are you talking about why God smote the Amalek?
Because
you look at this guy. Look at Speakeasy up there. He's loving it. He's loving it.
the reason
I would
why
kindly
we're
point you
discussing
to
the
Deuteronomy
Amalekite.
25:17-18, where the Amalek snuck up on the Israelites as they came out of Egypt and started.
Yeah,
smiting them
400
with
years
the rear.
earlier. 400 years earlier.
Just to
Yeah.
serve.
Yeah,
Ghosty,
400 years earlier. So it's just to kill innocent people for crimes they didn't commit.
You're smuggling in the innocent
Oh,
part.
that's some wild objective morals he got.
Because he gives up objective morality, he has given up the basis to judge objective morality.
Fair, pal.
Are you sure?
Is it morally wrong?
Wait a sec for the Christians,
We
like
use this
for
example.
Ghosty. One sec for Ghosty and Vigilante who's laughing at this. The mere fact that you're saying that, oh, like, look at these Christians like slaughtering innocent babies, you guys are justifying this. Ghosty, you said you're more than happy with the death penalty, so you support the Christians killing the Amalekites.
That's true.
Right?
No.
No,
They're not
because
even
there's
just.
innocent
There we go.
Okay, there's the pandemonium. There's obviously look, the whole reason murder is wrong is because people are made in the image of God. But if God owns everything, then he is just, and his way is the only way, because it's only just for the property owner to do whatever he wants with his property. I don't see a possible argument against that. However, those of us who don't own each other, those of us who are on the same level, those of us who are humans, don't have the ownership rights or the creative rights that God does to do any of this. I don't see, no matter what you don't like about it, no matter if you think it's cruel, no matter if you think it's unfair or unjust, that's all done away with by virtue of property rights.
The killing of babies. They're not just
Those are
morally justifying the
innocent-
killing of
You
babies.
activate
They're
innocence.
technically morally.
How does innocence exist in a world without moral objectives? How do you determine innocence from guilt? Doesn't make any sense. So check this out. When you go to Romans 9, as it is written, Jacob I have loved, but Esau I hated. What shall we say then? Is there unrighteousness with God? God forbid. And look, the children not being born, verse 11, referring to Esau and Jacob. For the children being not yet born, neither having done anything good or evil, that the purpose of God according to election might stand, not of works, but of him that calleth. Now, this has to do with salvation or whether or not they go to heaven. But it's God who even decides who goes to heaven, and people don't like that teaching either. People like to think that it's up to them and their goodness that brings them to heaven, but it's not. Where our goodness is an illusion. Our goodness is like used menstrual clause compared to God. Our goodness is an offense. Even the best thing we've ever done, we deserve hell for. That's why Jesus had to die in our place, taking the punishment for our sin, not just the nails on the cross, but the full wrath of God was spent on Jesus Christ. And when the full wrath of an infinite God who's been offended by sin offending all of an infinite God, is put out on Jesus Christ, that's how you know Jesus is God, because only an infinite person can receive an infinite punishment within a finite amount of time. And so that's why Jesus satisfies the wrath of God by taking the blame for our sin and him giving us his righteousness, so that even though the righteousness isn't ours, that's how we can be pardoned and saved, because Jesus took the just punishment for our sin on that cross. And if you trust him and ask him to give you a new heart and the Holy Spirit, it will change you and make you hate the things that God hates and love the things that God loves. This is the gospel. I urge you to read your Bible and ask God for guidance. You can start with the book of John and go from there. Each chapter is quite small.
Justify.
You're okay with the death penalty. You're
Those are
okay with the death
innocent-
penalty,
yes,
right?
Those are innocent people that didn't commit the
No, they're not
crime.
innocent people. You're
That's
okay
what
with
he
the death
just
penalty.
said.
These are
Yeah.
the difference between the death.
Shut up! Everyone just shut the up!
He just said they came back 400 years later. And
Yeah, you lot all still shouting while
so
you were
those people did not commit those crimes, and those children did not commit those crimes. They are
400 years
born.
later, though. That's a gross misinterpretation of the timeline.
How many?
Okay, well, even if it
years
was,
before
did the
Egypt,
children
they
do
wandered
it?
the wilderness for 80 years.
No, they
And then-
didn't.
Yes, they did.
There is no evidence to
Oh, wait.
support that assertion whatsoever.
Yes,
wrong
there
to say
is.
things
It's
you
in
have no
scripture.
evidence
Yes, there is. I'll actually defend most of
It's
those.
codified
Really?
in scripture.
For those of you following along, I said, is it wrong to say things you have no evidence for? Let the relativists decide.
That they wandered the wilderness
What
for
if I
80
use
years for
scripture?
one generation.
And where's the
past.
archaeological evidence of 3 million people fucking traveling across the Middle East?
all of this is
Where did
more
you get the number?
Wait a
It
second.
likely wasn't.
Well,
a-
yeah, sure. You because there's like
You're making assumptions on scripture that you
Hold on.
clearly have not read. It's
no,
like
wait,
sitting-
no,
it's like
no,
sitting
that,
down
no,
at a
that's not
book
true.
club that
No,
read-
To be fair, Shiva has read the scriptures, and that is the reputation Shiva has here. Okay, show on stream. I think Shiva's actually really enjoying this. I get the feeling some of his frustration he hears from whatever he's dealing with and its effects on his ability to debate. He seems to enjoy this. You would know probably, Mo, because I've not been around all that much. I've only heard Shiva from whispers and shadows of his reputation preceding him. But in terms of experience, this was my only experience actually going with him. And I don't know. I'm still curious where he would go with does God own everything? And then he would probably appeal to some kind of moral standard that God has to appeal to, and then trot along on that. And that seems to be the only move he would have left.
Read
No.
Treasure Island and trying to make assertions.
How
about
many
the-
armed men? How many armed
Among
men
those who've
traveled?
read it, you kind of look.
How many armed men traveled?
Ghosty, do you
No,
do you
no,
think
it's
that-
not irrelevant.
It is
How
irrelevant
many-
because they
how
support
many-
Shiva. It's
how
irrelevant
many
because they support
combatants?
they support the death bounty.
Do
How
you
many
understand
combatants
that it
traveled?
doesn't
The death
matter how
penalty
many
comes
people
with a
came out.
Yeah, God gave
How
the
many-
Malachites the death bounty.
Hold on, let me explain this to
Okay,
you guys.
look, Rev,
Really
how many
simply.
combatants traveled according
You
to the
see,
Bible?
Here's the thing: 6 million people could have came out of Egypt. 10 million, 100 million could have came out of Egypt. Here's the thing: not a single one of that generation entered the Promised Land. Not even Moses himself. They all would have died
Right.
before entering the Promised Land. So it would be
Right.
on the second generation. How do you
Right.
get 400 years? How do you get 2 generations in 400 years? That's what I'd like to know first off. This was within 2 generations of the slaughter. Okay, they
Really?
were morally justified.
Now, later on, Rev admits that he made an error in the timeline. So I just want to give a shout out for anybody who is an atheist who has read the Bible and knows that Rev is a little off on his order of events, just preempting that. He later admits to it and owns up to it because Rev is an honorable guy.
Now, explain to me: was the United States morally justified to drop 2 bombs on Japan?
Morally justified? What does that mean?
Explain.
See, you can't flip anything on a person who doesn't believe in morality, but then they're like, well, that morality, that is bad morality. There should be good morality and not bad morality. And it's like, dude, see, this is just a chameleon tactic.
To me, you're trying to hit us for a
It's your
moral
term.
justification.
You use the
I
term,
think it's
define your
more
own terms. I'm not going to define your terms for you.
That would be wrong. That would be
What
wrong.
do you mean
Hey,
by morally
no.
justified?
No, first off, you
Preference
grossly
plus force.
misinterpreted the scripture here.
What do
Now
you
I'm
mean by
asking you a
morally
question.
justified?
All your
Stop,
Was the
stop
United States
squirming.
morally
Preference plus
justified on
force.
dropping 2
Stop
nukes
trying
on
to get
Japan?
away. What do you mean by morally justified?
and don't.
No.
All right, here we go. I don't agree with his arguments. Whoop. But I do like having the pushback on my arguments. It only makes them stronger. I think he's actually against abortion. I think he's just playing devil's advocate here. Yeah, I heard later in the stream that he was saying that he was against abortion or somewhere along those lines. But yeah, it does make the arguments stronger to recognize any potential flaws or gaps in your argument. So I enjoyed this too because on a metaphysical level, I wanted to see how somebody could circumvent God's ownership of something. And then the best move you have is no, he doesn't, which tells me that the fallback is justified 100%. And yes, God, here's the thing, because the canon is closed, there's no room, I would say, for saying God told me to kill this baby. God told me to just take a knife and then hop in the nursery and, and say happy Thanksgiving, So I don't. That's why I think theology is so important to your apologetic, and it can't be some theoretical God, because theoretical God, propositional God, can tell you whatever, right? The God of the Bible is not going to tell you whatever because the canon is closed. You're not doing just war theory. You're not conquering a land. You can't even. Here's another good point. How in the body of theology of the God of the Bible could you support the killing of a baby, the random killing of a baby? Could you possibly show me a verse that would be in tune with that action? I don't think you can. Why? That'd be wrong.
On the same lens that you're trying to hold us to. that
I'm not holding you to
how is
anything. I'm just
how is
asking you
Israel
questions.
morally
I'm not.
justified for
I'm not
attacking
really
Amalek?
making any arguments.
Okay, that's just not true. That's just not true. Oh, fine morality your God has. It's like, why?
Well, now you give me a reason.
I'm just interrogating your position.
Rev,
and I'm
his reason
interrogating
is
yours.
preference. Yeah, Rev, his reason is preference plus force. That's the reason
Yeah.
why.
I
That's your
determined,
reason as
and
well.
I
You
have the
just
power
won't
to
admit
determine.
it.
I determine, and I have the power to determine. So therefore, I make the rules. Basically,
No,
down. I'm not-
the
I'm
Christians,
not,
the Christians are actually being like logically consistent here. Like they're against abortion and they're against the death penalty. But it's the
I gotta say, I am pro death penalty, and the reason I am pro death penalty, I'm not saying that if somebody has committed a crime, they die. You know, in all cases, you know, you steal a shopping cart and off with your head. That's not what I'm saying. But if you look at Romans 13, talks about verse 4. Romans 13 is classically the place you go to when you want to see the adherence to the government, and that was part of my Ephesian trifecta argument in the slavery debate, where we're not supposed to be insurrectionists, we're not supposed to do riots, and we're not supposed to just go around breaking the law insofar as it does not cause us to sin. So 13:4, for he is the minister of God to thee for good, meaning he, the one who is in the government, who has the power to carry the sword. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain, for he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. So if you're executing wrath upon someone who does evil, that's not a case of self-defense. That's a case of the death penalty.
the likes of Ghosty was like,
And he has authority to do it.
she's for the death, but one sec she's for the
yeah.
death penalty, she's for abortion. But
Yeah,
then
because I
she
don't
has an
get my
issue with
morality
God.
from
One
a
sec,
book.
she had an issue.
Everybody gets their morality from some form of communication. To say you don't get your morality from a book, what if I said I got my morality from word of mouth? Isn't that just the same thing? It's just communication. I don't get my morality from my book. Well, again, I'm holding her to her literal words. What she's saying is, I don't think the morality is correct. But getting your morality from a book, getting your morality from your mom, getting your morality from the TV, getting your morality from any form of communication whatsoever is still obtaining your morality from somewhere. The question is your conscience rightly informed? Is your conscience clean? That's the question at hand.
Issue with God killing babies, but she's for killing babies. So I don't understand why she's against God.
No,
More-
our
there's
God
very
is not.
little-
Because
more-
that has nothing to do with it.
No, Rev. According to her critique,
I don't think fetus has a distinct ontology from baby. That's the thing that the assertion that has yet to be proved.
according to her critique on the Christians, where it's like, oh, God will kill innocent babies, but she's all in favor of killing innocent babies. So her critique against religion or against God makes no sense. I'm using her position.
Mother's choice, first of all.
Yeah, God's
I
choice.
wouldn't
Real quick, guys,
moral
hold up 1 second, guys. I have a question, just because I see we're kind of going down the lane to like, is God real and good?
Yeah.
Debate here, and like
I wanna
I
go
just
back to the
want to
topic.
say, like, for everybody on, this is why I like that Shiva came up and gave the questions that he did, because like for everyone on the, like, especially the Christian side, if you were to assume, right, which I think it's a safe assumption, that the other side does not grant the Bible or God's authority, what's
Correct.
the strongest case against abortion using
That's why I was trying to
their
look it up.
worldview, right? Without a
I don't think there is one. It's like if their worldview is we are matter in motion, there is none.
appealing to a divine command. I know you did that at the starting rest,
Yeah.
but we're kind of moving now into the without appealing to divine command. Where's somewhere like they can actually, like, you know, engage with? Because I can
Let
see
me make sure I have the right definition of divine command theory, because the one I am aware of has to do with if God says something arbitrarily and has nothing to do with his eternal character, then that's what it becomes right. But in my understanding of divine command theory, that the Euthyphro dilemma seems to still have some sway over that. So Google. Divine command theory is a meta-ethical theory proposing that moral values and duties are determined by God's commands, making actions objectively right if commanded by God and wrong if forbidden. So here's my thing. If that is the total extent of what makes something right or wrong, I don't think it's comprehensive of the rationale of why it's right or wrong. Because if you say God and you don't mean the God of the Bible, and you just say, well, there is a deity and he has said a thing, unless it has to do with his eternal character, the God that you proposition would, the God that you propose would not necessarily have a tie to his character or something eternal to ground it in. It would just be a whim if you just allow the secularists to make you defend a propositional God, a theoretical model of God, as opposed to a specific God with definitional parameters and oughts and ought nots going on. So that's why I would not want to engage on a secular level of some kind of theoretical, mathematical, propositional, philosophical placeholder God.
Now they're kind of they can't really engage with something they don't believe in.
I don't see a moral
There's
basis.
one really simple.
How can they? Okay, they can't engage in something they don't believe in, but then they also don't believe in morality, but they're engaging on morality. Well, let's pick a lane.
Construct in the United States law. If a pregnant woman is murdered, the murderer is charged with 2 counts of homicide, not one.
Depends on the state.
That means the law itself places value on the unborn. So if we're going to follow,
they wouldn't call it a
we're
double
gonna follow the
homicide
laws.
if
Yeah, they
it
do.
was. No, I'm sorry. They
Yeah, he's
would
agreeing
not
with you, Red.
call it a double homicide if they did not place value on that unborn child. That's
Exactly.
The mother is placing value on it. So if she makes a decision to let it
She's
come
gone.
fully
How
to
is she making
term,
the decision when she's shot as well? Like,
she was making that decision actively before she was killed.
So it's weird. It seems like magic. It seems like if the mother felt a certain way, therefore the invisible value ghost falls and descends upon the baby, and now the baby has value. But if the mother's feeling the opposite way the next day, then the value ghost goes away, and the child no longer has value and is no longer a child. So it is or is not a human being, which is kind of a huge ontological leap to make just based on the whims and the decisions of one person's feelings.
Right?
Even pregnant women who weren't aware of their pregnancy.
No, because the flaw. One sec. The flaw in your thinking here, Ghosty, is the fact that human life is dependent on whether or not the mother chooses so.
Right.
But
Like,
the
what gives the
mother's
mother's
gone,
choice
who places
value?
value on that
back
life
off of
now?
that, she could be. Here's would be a scenario then to counteract
Well,
that.
sorry, Tomahawk. Before you go, let's. I want to go off of what Ghosty is saying there. Why should or shouldn't it be the mother's choice of the values? So like, let's go there. Like, why should or shouldn't it be? And I know, and I agree, but I don't put my bias here. But I agree, right, that there's a creator that gave us everything. But
I'm not even
without
going on
going
the
to
creator
that,
thing.
where would you guys say is the reason you or a mother shouldn't be the one that places value?
Okay, I don't know how I shouldn't even exists without a God. So when you say shouldn't place value, I want to know what that means either. I can say can't if something is categorically impossible in a secular world, like actual human life value, regardless of age. But there are no shoulds or should nots in their paradigm, which makes it a totally fruitless question in my mind. But you got to run a show. I get it. You got to run a show. You got to make it orderly. You got to have the chat so they can hear you and understand you. You got to get the noggin jogging for all the panelists so they have an interesting exchange of ideas. So that I sympathize with.
Because it's a fact.
side.
It's independent of what one feels or thinks. It's still a human life, and we either treat human life as sacred or we don't. And if we don't treat human life as sacred, then this whole thing of concept of justice, murder, all this kind of shit, we're fucking all that out the window as well.
What do you mean by sacred?
Yeah.
I'm hard.
As in, we're fucking out justice, we're fucking out murder, we're fucking out everything. If you no longer have that as a core tenet that human life is sacred, then fuck it. Like murder, rape, all this kind of shit. It's all up for grabs.
Okay.
What defines personhood?
Here's the interesting thing, though, guys.
For the purposes of asking what defines personhood, you want to be careful, because if you say being human defines personhood, then you're excluding angels and God, because if God is three persons and angels are persons, you want to be careful about that. So I think the classical answer to what defines personhood is a rational mind, having a soul, having a grasp of ethics and moral responsibility. So there's that. You know what? Let me actually look that up. What defines a person according to Christian theology? Because obviously humans are made in the image of God, but it never says angels are made in the image of God. So according to Christian theology, as a person is fundamentally defined as a rational, relational being created in the image of God, imago Dei, possessing an immortal soul and a mortal body. Okay. So as far as angels are concerned, I don't know how that all fits in, but I understand why that would be a thing. I don't even think that's a great definition, because if God is three persons and we're using the word person comprehensively, then I think that's not a one size fits all definition that cleans it up real nicely.
Go ahead.
In regards to what Ghosty was saying about the double homicide thing, she says if the mother places value on the baby, then it should be a double homicide, right? But just a little bit ago, I was asking her about coitus with a cadaver, and she was kind of alluded to the cadaver no longer has personhood. So if the cadaver, which is a dead body, no longer has personhood to place value on anything, then how can the mother who is dead place value on the baby?
Very true. You can have all the components of a human body and not have the person in question. So what's the difference if we're materialists, if everything is just matter?
Baby for the criminal justice system to persecute a man for double homicide. You see the internal
about her after
inconsistency in your logic.
Talking
And
about her
that's what I like to
choices.
try to figure out is where you stand with like your worldview.
I got a separate question.
Well, let
I
her
don't care
answer
about
before everybody jumps
abortions.
in.
The best part about a panel is when you ask a question and someone goes, I have a separate question other than the question somebody else asked, in which it is their turn.
Let
Under
her
16 to
answer.
20
You guys
weeks,
remember,
that's-
there's more of you. Let her answer before y'all dogpile.
Could you imagine all of us, instead of being on YouTube doing a remote call, we're all sitting at the same table, surrounding her, asking her questions about abortion, and like at a Wendy's somewhere?
It's not something that I care about if a woman decides to get an abortion before 20 weeks. That is just not something that I personally care about. Now, if there is a mother who has her own child in her own stomach that she personally values and wants to bring into the world, and she's choosing to do so, and if somebody comes and ends her and the baby's life, that's not her decision to end the baby's life. That is somebody else's, and therefore the responsibility.
That's true that distinction exists. So there was one argument that somebody told me about. What if instead of aborting the baby, somebody went inside and took a pair of pliers or a scalpel, and then removed the arm of the baby, then allowed the baby to be born with only one arm and continued to collect disability as a result? Would that be wrong? And then they just don't have an answer for that.
Ability of ending those lives is on the person who did it, who probably didn't even care to think if she was going to abort it. It's honestly irrelevant at that point.
Just real quick, because you seems like, okay, it's not my business whether or not she wants she consider.
I lost a viewer after that one.
A kid or not, right? Okay. What if there's two brothers, they're both over 18, and they want to have a sexual relationship with each other? Should we stop that, or should we say no? That's none of our business.
Incest is something that I don't know. Legally, it's questionable. I lean towards it being illegal because I do think there's, in most incest cases, this is something where the children or these relationships are kind of groomed into, or they're brainwashed
they're not
into
groomed.
these situations. Lots of times they are. So, but yeah,
But this is two consensual brothers.
if two consensual adult brothers want to be together, I'm not going to
Be
throw them in
together.
jail for that.
Exactly.
Do you think it's wrong?
Okay. So
I just think it's kind of weird. I don't.
Okay, how can you say something? What is weird in a place without norm claims? Weird. What's the difference between weird and rare in an atheistic worldview?
Know about wrong or right. I think it's weird.
Okay, so I want to take it back to the other one. Let's say there's a woman, she's like in line at the clinic to get the procedure done.
Weird is just like problematic, I think, in the view of a leftist. It just irks their feelings the wrong way, but it's not in itself a justification. Could you imagine thinking that they are justifying their own minds of thinking that their personal emotional reaction to a thing becomes the justification of what should be law and what should not be law, what should be curriculum and what not should be curriculum?
And somebody like shoots her, but she survives, but the baby doesn't. In most states, you actually don't get to not press charges. Like the state itself will file charges against the criminal, whether you want to have them charged or not. You actually can't force a dismissal. You can't just say like, forget about it. It's no big deal, whatever. Everything will be fine.
Yes,
You
the
actually can't do that.
state versus that criminal.
Yeah. Should she be able to dismiss the homicide of the child? Like in the double homicide case, but let's say she survives, but the baby doesn't. Should she get to say like, no, it's okay, I didn't want it anyway, and that person not get in trouble? Would that be okay?
No, because it's still that wasn't her choice to have some person come and shoot her in the stomach to kill the baby.
Right.
So
but then
like,
after the fact, she said, no, that I'm okay. Like everything's
Not sure
fine.
what
I'll
the
be
other
all right.
this is like saying, oh, say some guy
And move ahead a little bit.
starts like touching and grabbing.
The dude.
It's illegal.
Yeah, she filled the paperwork out. Should she be able to
Essentially,
drop
it's
the
a-
charges?
Let's
point.
get past Gaudi's argument here.
The reality of this is honestly not likely to ever happen but if it were the case that she essentially didn't want the baby, and so instead of getting the procedure, the quote unquote procedure would be this guy shooting her stomach and killing the baby outright, but she survives, would you even consider that a homicide at that point because she quote unquote depersoned the baby?
I guess that's an illegal abortion. Like
Not illegal.
Yeah,
She didn't
okay.
want it.
Hey, see, that's a start. That's a
No,
start.
shooting
I think
somebody
we
is
could work
illegal
from that.
no matter what. So,
But it achieved the.
I mean,
Okay.
Then the other side's question here: are you asking like because that's why I asked.
that's
Like,
the
if
shooting
you
part.
get shot, you can't like drop the assault charges. Like the state.
Okay, okay. Let me. I'll
that's
switch it. I'll switch it. I got it.
oh shit,
We'll get
she
past
changes
the
her
Gaudi.
mind last minute.
Getting past the Gaudi.
But I want to spend
Well, maybe it's like
spotting and stuff like that.
and stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So then,
Okay.
would you
It actually
be
gets
okay
more interesting
if?
after this. So, hey, Ghosty, I know I came late, but my question is, what confers value to the unborn from the mother's approval? What is there like a metaphysical thing? Now, Mo, you'll be interested in this because we have a contrast of a purely philosophical approach versus a biblical approach. So, Zach, the real ghost, does a philosophical approach to precept, and then I do one where I include biblical theology. Thing that happens when the mother says, "I value this," and then it's given or denied by the mother's attitude. How does that work?
It's just she made it. It's growing inside her, and ultimately, it's up to her.
So does that more? So God made all of us. It is in His world, and ultimately, it's up to Him. Really bind people to respect that wish.
Morally bind.
Morally bind people.
Does it morally bind others to respect that wish?
She says it's a
No,
person, so people have to respect that it's a person. And then the next moment she can say, "Oh, it's not a person
Well,
anymore." and
hold
now
on.
people-
I just wanna know-
Why are you denying
Whether-
the rights to the sperm that came from the man?
You don't have to agree.
she
with,
made it.
Oh no, I don't do the appeal to sperm argument myself.
Yeah, no,
Oh no,
Zach,
I'm
no,
not saying
yeah,
if I have to
she
agree with you.
made it.
I'm just
She
wondering
just
how
made
it works in terms of like you give it value because you want to keep it, and I'm not even characterizing what it is yet, but it gets value if you want to keep it, but it doesn't get value if you don't want to keep it. What is the actual thing doing work to give value to this, whatever you want to call it?
things only have value if we give them value.
So if we
Things
took,
are only valuable that we value. So,
if the majority took value away from one individual person, does that person no longer have value?
they're not valuable to other people.
already did that with the
They're probably pretty
See,
valuable.
that's the goalpost shift right there. It's not whether or not other people find them valuable, it's whether or not value exists. Does value exist because of popular consensus, and then can it be taken away by popular consensus? Does it exist on a metaphysical level? To say that something has value versus I value something is two different claims entirely. If I say this towel has value, I could be referring to money, I could be referring to sentiment, I could be referring to any sort of thing, and that would be an objective claim about something. But to say I value it is to necessarily make it a subjective thing and no longer a market space thing or a metaphysical value thing. Like if I say I as a human being or you as a human being have value, now I'm saying that regardless of my opinion, regardless of my personal opinion, it's not contingent upon me whether or not the value exists. But if I'm saying I value something, then I'm talking about something that's contingent upon me for that value.
Able to themselves.
So if a majority voted
Easy
away
answer.
somebody's individual value, could they kill them and nothing wrong happened?
People on death row have
That
no
person
value.
is that
That's
person is
your
a fully viable.
People on death row have no value. That's not true. People on death row are dying because they are dead to rights due to what they have done to the people that they've killed and the state. That
Person at that
presupposes moral, or that they've done other similar offenses too. Weights and scales. So that's not the same thing.
Well, I'm not really talking about this morally.
I was responding
like
to
you guys
Vigilante
are.
because he kind of
Oh.
got in the middle of that one.
Ghosty, I have a
Sorry, what
question
was your
for
answer,
you.
Ghosty? I didn't get it.
Oh no, I'm just like my argument isn't like a moral argument. Like I'm even fine with thinking it's immoral to do an abortion, but I would still want it to be legal. Like it's again, it's not something that like I enjoy or I'm like happy about. I think abortion is sad. But I also think it's the best decision for certain people, and I think their reproductive rights are up to them. Who
When you
get
say
pregnant.
rights, when
And
you
if
say
I
rights,
could-
sorry, go ahead.
If I could try to bridge
Reproductive
another gap
protection.
here that I think I'm seeing, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ghosty, but I think Ghosty sees morals as just whatever you think they are.
They're subjective, yeah. So
Well, she said rights too, but rights bind everybody, not just the one person who believes they have rights, right? Because
okay, I know
if you
rights
have
is
rights,
like a triggering word, so I'll say
No,
just
no.
reproductive protections, like the
it doesn't matter which word you use. It goes back to the agua water problem. It matters the thing we were talking about in question. To say rights or to say protections. Well, as I brought up before, are rights things that you protect? Because if so, then when men are protecting women's rights, then they're protecting rights that are already there and not granted to them by men.
freedom, reproductive freedom. Yeah, the freedom over your own reproductive health.
Okay, but then if you think your freedom should be protected, then that comes from a right, doesn't it? That comes from something intrinsic to
The law,
yourself and
it
others.
comes from the law. Your
But
your
that means
freedom.
if you
There's a
change the
right-
law, then you take away rights. So that's a horror story. Your rights do not come from the law, because if your rights came from the law, then legitimately people could vote you out of your rights, or a dictator could take your rights away. Our Constitution recognizes inalienable rights given to us by our Creator. I think it's the only one that I'm aware of, at least, that does it. Not that I'm a constitutional scholar or a legal scholar around the world, but on my limited education, that's what I recognize as different than many other countries in terms of rights being granted by fiat by some king or some dictator. They're not legal fictions. They are real. They are recognized in law. They can be recognized, and that's why you can tell what an unjust law is versus a just law, because you have a standard by which to say this law is just, this law is unjust, this law should exist, this law shouldn't exist. Otherwise, why even squabble about this? It's subjectively,
Sure,
because
if you
it's a
want to
law.
call it that.
Isn't that how it works?
It's a law. Like you're
Laws
allowed to get
changed,
abortions
rights are either
legally.
given or taken away.
So it begins again. Otherwise, we wouldn't have basis for laws if the rights didn't exist in themselves, because then laws would be entirely preferences.
Well,
I mean,
which
technically, you
deny.
can still get an abortion. You still have the right to do an abortion. It's just an illegal one, right?
So-
Everybody has
so in-
the right to do what they want, kind
Well, then
of.
rights
like,
mean
without
nothing. But go back.
right.
One sec. Go back to this whole thing of like morality. It's like, is demoralization, is that an objective phenomenon? I think it is. So if that,
I can agree that demoralization is an objective phenomenon. The question is, if you're an atheist, do you dismiss that because you think demoralization versus the opposite of demoralization is just a combination of chemicals in your brain as opposed to another combination of chemicals in your brain? What's the objective value of not being demoralized versus being demoralized if you're a materialist?
like what demoralization is, there's certain
She doesn't believe
actions
in
that either
genocide.
is done to humans or done by humans.
Hey, Shapingro, he says, hey, y'all. Whoop. I can't stay around today. Just dropping in to like and wish y'all well. Face red heart shape, says the robot text. Yes, please leave a like, subscribe if you have not already subscribed, share with your friends, let everybody know, tell the town. Shapingro is here on the Re-Examination Show, reviewing past debates. Shapingro, maybe later on you can review, because these are some very interesting debates in my mind. And look, Bass Guitar knows of the Shapingro. Hey, Bass Guitar, have you ever been on the Natural Law podcast? I would highly recommend checking that out. He debated Pisco not too long ago, and I jumped on that after panel, and that's behind a member paywall at this point. But while it existed in the open framework, it was quite interesting.
That these actions will make them lose the will to live. So if we look at demoralization as an objective phenomenon, we can then say that there's certain actions that will either increase or decrease your will to live. Ergo, we have morality. And immoral action.
Oh, and Shapingro, definitely check out the recent debate that came out between me and Andrew. That's the first thing I reviewed in today's stream.
Actions are actions that will either cause you or cause the person that you're doing this to lose their will to live. This is what
There's
morality
nothing
is.
objective about that.
You're
That is
presupposing she-
literally
Demoralization is an objective phenomenon. That's what I based the whole thing around.
You have to first prove
when
to her
certain
that
bad
objective
things
morality
happen to them.
exists. Otherwise, she's not going to understand you.
Yeah,
yeah,
demoralization
you're
is an
not gonna prove
objective phenomenon.
You
It's a
have to
sub-
explain
How?
objective to her, though. She
How is
doesn't-
that-
She denies objective.
Well, let's put it
Because-
this
ask her
way.
this.
How is that an objective
Does absolute
phenomenon?
truth exists?
Well, look, you could say that the phenomenon of what was the word you used? Sorry, I'm not remembering.
Does absolute truth
The
exist?
phenomenon of demoralization objectively exists, but the experience is subjective.
Exactly. Yes, truth. There
No.
is an ultimate truth, but our
Well,
understanding.
the experience is subjective in any objective occurrence, though, too, because I'm only myself having it. Like, for example, if I'm in the rain and I'm surrounded by 16 other people, 16 other people are also experiencing the rain subjectively. I'm not experiencing everybody else's experience of the rain, even if the rain is objectively happening. So I don't like the whole subjective experience thing doesn't really enlighten me a whole lot.
Understanding of it is always going to be subjective to our personal experience and
it's not
our
objective.
capabilities. Like
That's
just
not
because
Objective is mind independent.
Here, go see real
well,
quick.
that's like
if the right
subjective.
was
No,
not-
subjective
So
is
that's
mind
fine if
independent.
you want to deny objective, but that means
What?
you're denying
That's
absolute
literally
truth
what
within a
subjective
contradiction of itself.
Ghosty,
means,
if the
No,
right was
subjective means
not in the
mind
law,
dependent,
if
not
the
mind
right was-
independent.
if the
Oh,
right
oh,
was
I
not
thought
in
he
the
said
law,
dependent.
Subjective doesn't necessarily mean mind independent if that mind is God's mind, because God's mind is the basis of reality, morality, et cetera, et cetera. So it would have to be a non-contingent mind to be objective. It would be a contingent mind to be subjective. Should it be in the law?
I
If
was
the right
talking
was
about
not granted-
objective means mind independent.
Ghosty,
I didn't hear the in. I thought you said
Sorry.
dependent.
what I'm saying
Sorry,
is,
go ahead.
if the right was not granted by the law, should it be granted by the law? This is me knocking on the door of her conscience, saying, there are human rights. You have rights. You have value. You are made in the image of God. God loves you. You have sinned against this God. God's wrath is being stored up, but his mercy is given to you as you live on this earth. Take advantage of that. Turn to Christ. Turn to God. Ask for forgiveness of your sins. Read your Bible. All these good works aren't going to save you, but God does. First comes forgiveness, then comes your sanctification and your walk with God.
In my personal opinion, yes.
Okay, is your opinion equally valid to somebody who disagrees with you?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, let's back that up because that's important.
In my personal opinion, yes.
Oop, hold up. The right was not granted by the law. Should it be granted by the law?
In my personal opinion, yes.
Okay, is your opinion equally valid to somebody who disagrees with you?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So this is okay. I should have clarified this, I think, a little bit more. When I say their opinion, I don't mean the fact that she is another human being equal to somebody else who disagrees with her. What I should have said was, is the opposite position just as valid and just as true as yours? Because if her position is true and their position is false, then how do you know that a law should be passed? How do you know you have that metaphysical justification to say a law should be passed and should not be prevented from being passed and should not be opposed and should not be taken down? These, like, to say, well, to me, it's like, okay, then according to you, there are certain laws that should affirm certain things that applies to more than just you. There's the incongruence there.
Because she only believes in subjective morality, not objective morality.
Yeah.
So
and that's
you're
the problem. You're about to speak past each other because she can't understand objective. No offense. It just doesn't make sense in your worldview.
Yes.
So demoralization is not a phenomenon.
And
Well,
if
I mean,
I heard
to the-
correctly earlier when you guys were going back and forth, I think Ghosty just said she believes there is a ultimate truth but to everybody it's going to be different and nobody can actually know it because it's always subjective.
Yeah,
Is that what
there's
you're
an
saying?
ultimate. There's an ultimate reality,
the
but
problem is, of course, that's a truth claim. That's the classic response to that.
I mean, we are actually
To go on and say everything is subjective and then go on making absolute statements is, classic self-defeating.
limited to our conscious and experience and ability.
Could you imagine I brought up anything like the roundness of the earth and I said we're limited by our conscience and therefore it's just as equally reasonable to believe that the earth is flat? That's not going to fly.
Is like we wouldn't
Is that a
know
truth
that
statement?
we wouldn't know that like some molecule exists that we can't see without the tools to see it. But that's
Is
still
that a
hard. Like
truth
there's
statement?
So
I mean, I think we
I
can
don't even
assume that's a
know.
true
I could be
statement, yeah.
wrong about
So
that.
again, we're back to subjective.
Ah, it's so painful. I could be wrong about that, but please pass a law in which I could be wrong if something's a baby or not.
Yes, that's why I'm saying everything
So,
is
I have
subjective.
to ask: can an unjustified belief justify a belief?
Can an unjustified belief justify a belief?
Yeah, I mean, the
That's
justification
essentially what
doesn't
you're
have to be
doing.
valid,
Is
does it?
if you can't ground
all
the
subjective, right?
information or knowledge, then you're using an unjustified belief.
Well, can you ground those things?
Yeah, that would
I
be
ground
my.
them via God in the tag
What
argument.
does that mean?
But that's just a thing.
one sec.
That's
I
just
grounded
another
morality.
The tag argument absent of scripture, well, you'll see.
Objective
I
thing.
grounded morality in demoralization. That's an objective phenomenon that we can
That's not-
observe.
people can feel
I don't know
bad
what you
when
mean
bad
by
when bad
Did you hear that?
That we can
That's not-
observe.
people can feel
Shiva's chuckling about the tag part.
people feel
I don't
bad
know what you mean by
when bad I'll just say when things happen to them that affect them in a negative way.
I think Teriak, when he goes into demoralization, he's tapping into the fact that we have value, we have rights, we have purpose, and if we lose their sense of purpose, then things go horribly wrong for us. So, for those of you who don't know, your purpose is to glorify God, and if you hate that, that's what's called sin.
Shall I tell you
That's
how
the best I can say.
what I think about abortion? Because I haven't actually stated my position yet, and it's probably going to surprise some of you. My view is broadly a moral emotivist view, in that I don't think that moral statements are truth act, and that when people say things like abortion is wrong, they're expressing an emotion about that they're expressing how they feel about the act. So I actually don't like abortion, and I would prefer that people didn't abort their children.
Children, good. I actually came out with a YouTube short today talking about emotivism and how it compares to Alex O'Connor saying that it's like, well, we also feel the same way about like not eating tar. And so maybe we feel the same way about things that like murder and etc. because we find them disgusting, but we also find not eating tar disgusting. And so we can find that we know it's a commonality, not because of conscience, but because of our natural response to it that came to us through evolution, which I don't buy.
But that's not from a kind of like I couldn't say that's from a moral viewpoint, because like were you to say is abortion wrong, I would have to say that the statement is kind of faulty.
Right on.
One of my questions would be like, okay, are your feelings based on rational thought, or is your thought, your rationale based on feelings? Because if your rationale is based on feelings, then they're all post hoc justifications. But if your feelings are based on rational thought, then your feelings are justified. And if your feelings are justified, what do your rational thoughts latch onto to make the objective claim that something is wrong?
Also, I just want to say that you were right about that 400 years too. The Israelites didn't attack the Amalek until 400 years later, after Deuteronomy 25 was written, and that was done under reign of Saul. But that was also after 400 years of being attacked by the same people.
See, Russ is an honorable guy, owning up to when he is incorrect.
People. Oh yeah.
Please look up at Unapologetic Preacher on YouTube and subscribe to him. Give him a like. He needs more subscribers.
No problem. I'm definitely.
He was supposed to have a live stream today. I don't know when that's going to happen, but hopefully it happens soon. I think he was up all night long on Verbal Combat on the Speakeasy channel. Like and subscribe.
Willing to own that one. And knock stuff over apparently too.
Right. And to be fair, God kills everybody. There is not a death that happens that God has not predetermined, including the death of Christ.
That's what makes him. Well, no, I'm not going to get into that.
Predetermined.
All right, let's play that again. Death of Christ.
That's what makes him.
That's what makes him what? That's what makes him what? Was there a moral claim that was going to come out of that? That's the thing. That's the thing. It's like ultimately everybody who is a human is a moral agent. They make moral judgments. They make moral claims. They make moral evaluations all the time. These philosophical posturings are just that. It's only for the sake of an argument for a worldview you don't like. And then look again. No disrespect to Shiva. Shiva is an intelligent individual, and in the midst of all these things that are painting him, which I don't know, I'd have to look back at the Teriak channel. Definitely thoughts and prayers out to Shiva. If there's anything that can be done for Shiva, then obviously it'd be a great time to do it for whatever issues are going on. But I'm just saying, in terms of this argument, I think it's denying our humanity. I think it's denying reality to make moral judgment claims. While at the same time being outraged at somebody who makes moral judgment claims. Hey.
Well, no, I'm not going to get into that.
Predetermined.
He's not going to get into that. Rowdy Gowdy. Holla holla, sunny day in here. Where is your sunny? Oh, you're talking about me? Because I do my podcast from the surface of the sun right over here. Is that what we're talking about? Yeah, sunny day. Do you have a Djokovic hat, Rowdy Gowdy? That's my question. Okay.
Let's not get excited. I mean, there are always lovely debates we could have.
I was waiting. I was waiting.
I would re-examine the language of predetermined there, but I think I understood what you meant.
So for those of you who don't know, let's see. Can I get some shade? Maybe I should get some shade. For those of you who don't know, Zach is an ortho and I'm a Protestant. Here we go. Yeah, if you look at Revelation 13:8, one of the verses I cite the most, it says that God, the Lamb who was slain before the foundation of the world. So it was a predestined plan.
The Lamb was slain. Is that a reference to Jesus?
That's a reference to Jesus, like how John the Baptist says, "The Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world."
I mean, we're gonna stray to free will here. We're gonna.
Who else could it possibly be the Lamb in this case? Who else was slain? Who the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world? Who else could that possibly be? To say I need an interpreter. What if if I'm right? How did I get right without an interpreter? That's what I'm asking. Well, then you have an infinite regress of interpretation because somebody had to be the first one to
who's
read
the
it.
moral authority on the interpretation?
Somebody had to be the first one to read it and understand it.
You realize the Bible came in after Jesus Christ, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So
I'll give you an example.
I have to ask, can Jesus Christ give her?
When Philemon received the book of Philemon in a private letter from Paul, did he read it and understand it? Did he need a spiritual authority to understand that? Because if not, then it shows that isn't required.
The true message to someone and have that passed on? through ecclesiology?
he said he
Sure.
would.
Okay,
But I'll
then
give-
wouldn't
let
that
me
be
give
where
you-
the truth is?
Yeah, so let me give you an
Before the book?
example. Let me give you an example. So let's go to Matthew 19, where
But you're
there-
using scripture
Jesus
to now
is-
justify things.
Yeah, I can. So Matthew 19 has the story of where Jesus talks to the Pharisees, and they're talking about divorce and remarriage, right? And he says, "Have you not read that from the beginning he made them male and female, and let what God has put together, let not man separate," right? So he says to the Pharisees, who, by the way, were going to hell, which means unsaved people can read and understand the Bible. He says to them that they should read. And in Matthew 23, he says to the people, is like, the Pharisees, they sit in Moses' seat. Do as they tell you, but don't do as they do, which means that they could read scripture, understand scripture accurately enough to teach it accurately, even though they were lost men and unregenerate. So yes.
No, that's not how it works. The Bible is a liturgical document. It's not meant for the layman to understand. And
I'm waiting for an explanation. To say that's not how it works is just regurgitating your position. You have to be able to have some explanatory power for anybody who has read the Bible, who is not a saved person, and say, how did they come to the correct conclusions without your parameters of where correct conclusions come from? That's my question. I think that's an assertion. I think that's just an assertion that,
But where do you get your moral authority from? If you don't have an ecclesiology that's longer than 500 years, which Protestantism can't trace back further than that.
That presupposes that I need the church as an entity to understand the Bible without and I can't do it on my own. Now, again, we should read church history. We should have context. Church history should give railings to what kinds of interpretations you can have. However, if you have an institution that's been going on for a long time and either changes things or adds on to things so as to have the effect of change over time, it doesn't matter if they kept the same flag and the same uniforms and same colors for thousands of years. As long as the teaching has changed, you can say, well, this is the norm, right? It's like, well, was it always the norm? What happened? What was there first, the church or the councils? And if the church was there first, then why would you need the councils? And if the councils are just restating the doctrine, where did the doctrine come from?
That because that's where Martin Luther broke off from the Catholic Church. Your ecclesiology
Martin
starts.
Luther isn't the founder of all Protestantism.
I'll give you
Martin
another
Luther's
example.
Well, it was him and
great-grandfather,
another
John
fella,
Luther,
as far as I'm
started
aware of.
a Protestant Reformation in Scotland. He didn't even know Martin Luther.
Yeah, I'll give you another example. If you look at Acts 17:11, it talks about how the Bereans check the words of Paul the apostle to see if these things were true, and the Bible in that passage calls them noble for doing so. So if even an apostle himself is subject to the reading of scripture by the people who want to hear what he has to say, then it tells me that even an apostle is inferior to the reading of scripture.
If I read scripture, you read scripture, we both come up with different interpretations. Where's the truth?
Yeah. So I think the answer to that would be, does it square with the entire Bible? Which is why when atheists ask, can you eat pork? Can you eat bacon? Can you eat shellfish? Can you wear mixed fabrics? Can you pick up sticks? Well, the Sabbath is a whole unique sort of thing. But when it comes to like the Old Testament laws of things that have passed away that they don't understand because they haven't read the whole Bible, they need to square it with the entire Bible. Something can be true for a time, and then the standard in the case of Israel was no longer shall you have these purity laws that are illustrations of purity. Now the real thing has to come out. Now the standard is raised. You've heard this, you've heard do not commit adultery, but I tell you, don't even lust, because lust is adultery of the heart. You've heard do not murder, but I tell you, do not hate, for hate is murder of the heart. So the symbols now become actuality in practice. The standard was lower in the Old Testament, and now it is higher in the New.
Up with an
And who
interpretation of what
determines
is written.
where the truth is found?
Can I ask
So
you?
if you can show from the whole Bible how your view is actually squared within it, then that's what makes the interpretation correct. But the faulty interpretation is not going to square across the entire Bible simultaneously.
If I read
You need a
Treasure
moral
Island and you read
authority.
Treasure Island, would we each come up with different interpretations? Will we both know who Billy Bones is? Will we both know whose treasure is buried on the island if we read
That's
the same book?
presupposing the information to begin with, but
Well, you see, books are written and scripture is written. It's written to be read and understood.
Well, if
That's
you
how
read the Constitution,
yeah, but if
it's
two different
literally meant
people
to be
can come up with
interpreted.
two different interpretations, then where is the truth? You have to be able to identify it. Truth has an identity. What is it?
Yeah, Jesus Christ of Nazareth.
Okay. And the truth couldn't have been passed.
Through the Holy Spirit.
There's a little bit of equivocation here, because if we're saying the truth couldn't have been passed, now we're differentiating the truth from Jesus. Now we're just talking about individual bits of information, which is an entirely different claim. So if we're talking about Revelation 22, where the book is closed, you're not supposed to add or take away from the book, then traditions, it just seemed like, an accretion. It just seemed like an addition. They use the passage saying, keep to the traditions which we are told. It doesn't specify which traditions, though. So I don't know where the limiting principle is on that interpretation. Yeah, that presupposes,
So what you're telling me is
you need like
Jesus
an
Christ
oral
didn't
law.
give any information on how to keep everything of his commands as a one universal truth?
Why couldn't that be the Bible?
Because the Bible wasn't written yet.
Okay, so, but
It was a
I
collection of books that
agree.
happened
I agree that things were transmitted orally, but now that
100
we have the
years later.
Bible, now that we have the Bible, we know that that's reflective of what happened.
Do you know why?
So you're using the thing to justify the thing?
You can use the thing to justify the thing if it's the mind of God.
Do you know why
Makes
John
sense.
wrote the
Doesn't the
Gospel
Bible
of
say
John?
thy word is truth?
Do you even
But
trust
you're using the
history
thing to justify the thing.
Yes, because it's foundational. What this really is a battle of, is the Bible sufficient or not? Because the Catholics and the Orthodox would say it's not, and the Protestants would say it is. God's word, so it's therefore from God, linked
But
to
the
God.
thing
the
didn't
heart of
always
God.
exist. How did the faith exist before the book exists?
Because God's mind exists and God's mind produced it. Didn't you read second? That's actually more dispensational than me, because dispensationalists would say that people before the Old Testament weren't saved by Christ because they didn't know about Christ. Well, that's not true. We know from, again, Revelation 13:8, that he was a Lamb of God slain before the foundation of the world. We know from Romans 4 and other places that Abraham was saved by faith in God. Now, he didn't have the entirety of the gospel, but he was still saved by the gospel because no one else is saved outside the blood of Christ. Peter 1:21, it's by the
So
Holy
it was
Spirit.
just this sort of immalleable thing that just happens?
It's from the mind of God.
The faith didn't always exist, though, did it? Because the Israelites were stiff-necked, and God had to punish them quite often due to their lack of faith.
I think that's a non sequitur.
goes
That's okay. So there was equivocation there between faith, meaning the codified set of beliefs, and faith, meaning an individual holding to those codified set of beliefs. I want to find a passage. Sufficient? Hold on. I think it's righteousness in Timothy, where it talks about the word of God being not the word sufficient, but in idea sufficient. Psalms is full of them. I picked a horrible. Let's go. Let's go. Is it First Timothy? Oh, it must be Second Timothy. So Second Timothy, all Scripture is given. 2 Timothy 3:16. All Scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, and for correction, and for instruction in righteousness. So that's the one that people usually go to. Let me see here real quick.
Judaism
Two
and
different
Christianity, but
Well, maybe.
as a continual line.
It's a little different, but we can look to what happened with ancient Israel to see what's happening now with spiritual Israel. Correct?
No, because none of you motherfuckers know anything that's going on in the Middle East. I don't trust any single one of you to give an actual representation of what Israel is and all this kind of shit. I don't trust none of you.
Let's stick to the argument of how you're using scripture to
W's in the chat for Teriak.
justify your
Like and subscribe, Teriak, and spin that wheel.
use of scripture.
And how does this relate to abortion? Just to ask.
That's a great question.
Bring it back.
Topic shifted, bud.
Because they're trying to justify their moral belief for why they think abortion is wrong.
I think
So,
that's
no,
true.
topic
I
is-
think this is the beginning of the Shiva versus Zach round. I
Yeah,
think
because
Zach,
the man was
Zach, we're on the same
citing that
page, right? About
everything is
abortion.
predetermined.
Well, to be
Zach, we're
fair, I
on the-
didn't appeal to religion when I first came on the panel. I appealed
Yeah, I wasn't trying to do that either.
to the morality of eugenics and the use thereof, and its use throughout history by the very degenerate and deplorable nation states, such as Germany during World War II, who is the lead propagator of that practice you call abortion, and it was a part of their eugenics program, which became popular in the United States after Germany's fall in World War II, and after
Okay.
Operation Paperclip, when all the German scientists and doctors came
Mhm.
over here and got pardoned.
I could also
So
say
you-
that
And
guns were
infiltrate the
used in
CIA
World War
and
II.
NASA and all these organizations. But yeah, go ahead, Russ.
I can also say that guns were used in World War II. So what? Therefore, we shouldn't use guns anymore because they were.
Obviously, war is different than any other scenario. That's why this is brought up. Oh my gosh.
Abused.
There is such a thing as just war theory.
At some
Should
point.
we put all of our enemies in a gas chamber and gas them?
No, that's a it's like a war
That's
crime.
eugenics. That was a form of Nazi.
Is war a war crime? Because if war is not a war crime, I don't know what the guns analogy was supposed to be.
It's eugenics. A war crime. Yes, eugenics is a war crime.
Right, but that's not an
Well, hang
argument.
on a second, one second, Ghosty. One sec. If morality, is subjective, what's wrong with putting your enemies in gas chambers?
Good point, bud.
Nothing. But that's not the
Exactly.
argument.
So congratulations, Ghosty. Congratulations. You're a supporter of the Third Reich.
It's our contract together, like that we all value life, and it's our human experience that determines our morality and our
What gives our experience value?
our justifications,
No,
our
it's false
values.
doctrine. That's your God.
No, one sec. Ghosty, if you
So-
truly value human life, how can you say that you're pro-abortion or pro-death penalty?
She can't
Because death
constitute as a
penalty
lie.
is for
So it's
people
consistent in
that
her
I
position.
think have committed enough harm that they deserve that at that point.
How do you deserve something if morality doesn't exist? And also, if your feelings determine who deserves what, I mean, good luck. Good luck with that one. On top of that, let's back that up a little bit.
Have committed enough harm.
What is harm? What is harm? Because let's say I cut off my arm and then we call that harm. Why? Because you ought to be healthy. Well, what is health? In an atheistic worldview, there's no such thing as harm because there's no way that our bodies or our minds ought to be objectively in terms of an inviolable state. If I say that people shouldn't cut off other people's arms because that harms them and it harms their health, well, what is health? Right? Health is just our subjective evaluation of how bodies, the shape that bodies should be in. But if bodies are no more than just matter that's clumped together by natural phenomena, then what is health? What is harm? Tell me.
That they deserve that at that point.
Does that mean that their life loses value?
It's not even about if their life has value or not. It's a consequence for the fucking
Right.
disgusting actions they did.
But
yeah,
there
order for the death immoral
penalty to
actions.
be- this seems like an inconsistency, and the reason why I'm saying that is because I used to have the same inconsistency. So I used to be kind of not pro-abortion, but I wasn't anti-abortion. Like I, I didn't really have a view on it because I don't have babies. But I think it was easy pointed out to me that that's actually inconsistent with my view on the death penalty, which I'm against, because for reasons that are unknown to me, I value human life. And if I value human life and I'm willing to extend that value to like murderers and rapists and child molesters, then I should be able to extend that to everyone. And that includes unborn children.
There are some punishments worthy of death.
Yeah, like I said, I
I
don't.
don't think it violates anything to say that you have to die because of a certain extent of a crime, which its strength it makes it a good case for death.
Value unborn children under a certain age.
Well,
of
what's your
development.
metric for why you don't value them? Is it sentience
It's
or autonomy? Is that a better word? to use?
brain. It's like mostly the amount of brain development that leads to viability. Like
Well,
that's
if,
my
if science can't determine exactly when that is, then how do you know when it's killing and when it's not?
well, science can't determine consciousnesses. I'm pretty sure we do know when the five brain, like essential 5 parts of the
21
brain.
to 24 weeks is when consciousness starts.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's guessed. It's not like completely.
Well, that's when we can detect the architecture that allows for consciousness. That's not the same thing. as saying
So
that's
my
when-
answer is a time that is a little bit before
Just wanted to note that an atheist used the word architecture in terms of a brain.
that time where
But
science
if
has
you,
guessed
if you
this
have
shit.
no objective standard, then when is
I
it?
know you can say it's a figure of speech, but why? Why not just say circumstances? I mean, even then, yeah. If I was an atheist, I'd use the word circumstances.
Going to be killing versus it's a clump of cells.
There's not like a exact date.
See, there's
like
a problem there. It's now just up to your interpretation.
yeah, I just
Whoever's
don't-
interpreting the procedure So you have a problem if we can't have a universal standard for that.
Because to jump on to pile on to jump on to add on to it, that's the word, to add on to that, any woman at any time during a pregnancy could then just determine, oh, it's not alive, it's not alive, it's not alive, it's not alive, and then a week before or even a day before the birth, suddenly she thinks it's alive.
That's why
At
we have
which-
laws for how long elective pregnancies
But
should
then
be
that,
legal.
hold on, but then that's not
Do they use reasons to make those laws? Did they use value claims to make those laws?
allowing the woman to determine, it's allowing the state to determine whether that's personhood or not. So there would be the inconsistency of, well, if you're gonna give women sole control, sole determination of the quote unquote of the personhood of the baby, of the infant, well, that flies in the face of the state, the government imposing that imposing a set time limit. Who would trump who, basically? Who would have the ultimate authority of what determines the person of the infant inside that's developing? The woman or the state?
I mean,
The
ultimately,
state.
science does, but yeah, the state will make a law for when is appropriate, what
But-
time period is appropriate.
But the state determines that personhood is 8 weeks.
But do they use a rationale to determine it, or is it just the state said it, therefore it is?
But the woman herself determines that the personhood is 16 weeks, and
That she
sci-
values it.
Well,
she
and
wants
also
it.
and also science. If you're going to add science into the mix, science determines personhood at conception. So again, who would be the ultimate arbiter of determining
What if society valued it, even if she didn't? Could they stop her from getting an abortion?
whether or not the infant is a person? Science, the woman,
I
or
don't
the
even.
state?
I'm not even worried about determining whether it's a fucking person or not. All I care about is
here's
that
a-
women have the choice to not continue with
I
the
can frame it
pregnancy
in a way you
before
will
a certain period of time.
Let me
That's
frame
like
it in a way you would
all I
care.
really care
If
about.
we're in
What
a
if we legislate that a pregnancy can end after 10 months?
birth rate crisis, at least could you give the concession that we should limit or eliminate abortion
I know it's 9, but you know what I'm saying.
up until the point we're in replacement rate? Could you at least make that concession? Because at least from a utilitarian perspective, least amount of harm, we don't want to have to import foreigners, because then that destabilizes culture. So we want to keep people within the culture and giving their own values to their children. To
Well,
make
I'm
our
fine
populace.
with. I don't see a harm from immigration. First of all, second of all,
It can't happen
I'm not a full
rapidly. Hold
I'm
up.
not like a full utilitarianist person, but
Everything
um,
reduces to that if you don't have religion.
I'm more about personal freedoms. Honestly, that's most what I'm not gonna
Personal freedoms. As long as you can't speak for yourself and you're tucked in the womb.
force people. I'm not gonna
That's still
force.
harm.
I'm not gonna force people to have children that they don't want because like the human race
That's
is
the harm
ending.
principle.
But sometimes you're put in a bad position where you're responsible for the health of that person and the well-being of that person. So, for example, one scenario I was told about was, what if there's a dictator of a country and he takes you and he says, here's a gun, shoot this kid. Now, if you say that you have to because it's the government, well, then you're violating a moral ought to not murder a kid. But you can be a hero and be the one who does not murder the kid, even though there is a situation in which you are being highly pressured to do so under the threat of your life and well-being. So take that into consideration. Sometimes there are no answers where maybe you didn't choose to have that kid put inside you, but even in that case, all you have are hero and murderer to go forward with. So be a hero.
It's all just about a subjective interpretation. That's the harm principle. It's all going to boil down to harm.
Sure.
what
People
would you
not
do? Do as thou
having
wilt
babies might
until
harm
you
the
don't
human
leave harm
race, but it
else.
won't harm individuals.
It
But
will
what I'm
harm the
getting at-
human race, but it won't harm individuals.
No,
Are you saying
right.
that individuals would not be part of that human race in that sense?
Well, they're
They-
gonna
they don't-
die. They're already born. They're gonna die no matter what. A human race following after them isn't going to affect their their life. So
Nobody will
and
remember
in a
them.
birth rate crisis, there'll be less humans the longer that goes on. So
Mhm.
would you essentially be okay that at some point, if there just comes a time where there are no more humans, that's fine?
That's it.
Because-
That's
yeah, that's
inevitable.
nature. That's kind of nature, I guess.
It's
Well,
kind
then
of
where are you getting your purpose from?
Well, hold on. How are you going to appeal to nature when the childbirth is also part of nature and you're going to intervene with that? Why wouldn't you intervene any way you want, even though something is part of nature?
If
Yeah,
it isn't to
why are you
make
here, in a
more of
sense?
us and progress society, which would be via us, because society depends on us, yes, then where's your purpose? Where's your teleology?
My purpose for my own life, or
Well, just
like,
humans in general. It's like it's just some malleable thing. that
I'm a
you
human.
If we're all
decide
I'm a
gonna die
human.
in the end, if we're all gonna die in the end, why even go through life as life in general?
This is the thing. You guys live for an afterlife. You guys care about what happens after death. I'm living for what happens now in the present. I'm not worried about what happens after
Hedonism.
death. My life is valuable because of I'm experiencing this now in the present, and that's what I value. I'm not valuing.
I would
the
argue
past.
though, if
the
you don't
future
have a way
has
to
no meaning to you.
Hedonism isn't necessarily bad. Hedonism can be good. What if your pleasure? What if the pleasure that you're attaining to is providing for your family and being an upstanding member of the community?
See, it's a bunch of morally charged language from a guy who like says he doesn't believe in morality. What if it can be good? What is upstanding? Why are you using that as an example? Was like what? Again, all these examples prove that he is appealing to a moral sense. Now, he could defend and say, "No, I just know the Christian point of view, and so I'm going to use these words to maintain logical consistency." Okay, then it means you value logical consistency over logical inconsistency anyway, which goes back to how people ought to think. Otherwise, why are you mixing yourself up in how people think and getting upset when people don't think what you deem to be consistent?
Can happen at this very moment, by the way.
Like that's hedonism.
Hedonism can surely align with what's morally good, but that doesn't mean it's morally good.
Right.
It's
But
just
it doesn't mean it's
materialism.
morally bad either.
It's just materialism.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it can be, because hedonism isn't about morals.
As opposed to what?
The problem is hedonism is implicitly selfish in nature, unless there's some kind of qualification to make hedonism not hedonism in its purest form anymore. The understanding I have of hedonism is it is doing all things to maximize your self-happiness, self-pleasure, self-experience. So even if you coincide with doing moral things, that's just because maybe your conscience feels at ease for doing it or feels enlightened because you've done good things. But that's not what makes something good.
Can't hedonism being like having a lot of
actually having a
sex or
moral
something?
standard that isn't up to you. You don't get to determine
What moral standard?
ethics.
Christians don't have a
Virtue.
moral standard.
Yeah, they do.
They do.
No, they don't, because when they're got told
literally
to
came from
kill a whole
God.
bunch of fucking babies, they'll go and kill a whole bunch of fucking babies.
What makes that immoral in your worldview? To say they don't have a moral standard, even if you would say divine command theory is a moral standard, at least it is a moral standard. But to say that it's not a moral standard is would be a crock.
To Shiva.
When
Count to
were
Shiva would be-
Christians told to kill
One
babies?
One sec. Why aren't all these drug addicts happy
Sorry,
people?
no, that's a fair point. They weren't Christians. I retract that statement.
Okay.
That was a wrong
All good.
statement.
All good.
A fun fact about Christians and babies, though, and in Rome.
That was a good cat.
But even so, if you want to say those who followed God, regardless of whether Christ was revealed at the time or not, it wasn't a blanket statement. Go kill babies. It was what happens in war in the ancient Near East all the time. And even those there were passages like Deuteronomy 20, which was while it's an uncomfortable passage. One thing should be noted is that not all civilizations let their women and children live, but Israel was commanded to let the women and children live, as in Deuteronomy 20. Now, that wasn't always the case for Israel. Many times they killed everything and everybody, maybe. Well, if you listen to Gavin Ortland, that's not literally how it happened, because he uses arguments that say where these civilizations that were supposedly destroyed went elsewhere, where it says in the Bible that this is where the people retreated after they were annihilated and destroyed. He would say that is like war narrative language that is used in the Middle East at the time. Now, I haven't read every war manuscript or any historical manuscripts, from the original languages myself. Gavin Ortland probably has. I would say check out his channel as well. But yeah, I would differentiate those kinds of wars of annihilation versus wars where the women and children are meant to live. And I would definitely classify it all under the will of God for establishing a nation for which the Christ was to come out of. But again, like I said earlier, God determines how everybody dies. God determines when everybody dies, and God has the right to do both of those things.
A fun fact about
Because he owns everything, including us.
Christians and babies go in Rome.
That was a good catch.
Came as man. That's our standard.
So one of my strongest fields of study is actually Christian history and patristics. I study this greatly. I'm very fascinated with Christians in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd and 4th centuries. So check this out. Early on, while Rome was still at its reign, the pagan Rome, they would discard infants like they were trash. If they found no value in them, they just throw them away. Well, the Christians would go and collect those babies, take care of them, and raise them as their own. This started rumors among the pagan Romans that Christians were actually eating the babies. They considered us a blood cult, which is the most metal thing ever, by the way. Should be Christian. But it goes to prove that Christians have always placed value on life and on innocence, even from the start of our religion.
Amen.
But we're the only ones that actually have a moral standard.
Do you think if Christianity was discovered 10,000 years before it would be the same way?
Well, Christianity wasn't discovered.
I don't think it would make a whole hell of a lot of
Paganism
difference.
is a lot older religion.
If God is the truth,
Yeah. So even in the Bible, there is no Judaism until you could argue at the earliest Genesis 12, and there have been many years and generations, and the Tower of Babel and everything. Wow. Actually, that's a great question. Where was the Tower of Babel? That is a great question. I don't want to get that wrong. So Tower of Babel had to have been post-flood. Flood was like Genesis 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's see. Babel. So we're in Genesis 10. Yeah. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, Calneh, and the land of Shinar. Yeah. So we got Genesis 10 and 11 having to do with Babel and how the people's languages were confused and the people spread across the earth. Even before then, there was no Judaism until, again, arguably Genesis 12, and there had been multiple generations of people before then. And I believe it's in Genesis 6 where it talks about people beginning to call upon the name of the Lord when there was no codified religion, there was no clergy, there was no church, there was no synagogue, there was no practice whatsoever. There was just people and their consciences and the teachings of Adam and his line who would be righteous in the context of their time. That would have passed down this knowledge and passed down this understanding. So that is technically true, that we can find things that were pre-Bible, that were pagan and all these sorts of things, but that doesn't contradict what the Bible says at all.
and all truth originates from him and emanates outward, then it would still end up in the truth. So you can't change that.
Yeah, I just don't think logically it makes sense that they would just have all these new age random beliefs.
You're saying
that
logic,
none of
but you
that
can't justify logic. That's the problem. You're using something you can't justify.
You don't have a metric as to how.
Now I understand like being aggressive in a debate when the debate's aggressive. I try not to be aggressive if it doesn't have to come to that. And I think the proof for that would be the debate where I was called too nice on does biblical Christianity give moral approval to slavery. Trench Deacon was saying I should have stomped on his head. but I'm not usually not a head stomper. I feel like Zach wasn't getting the kind of pushback that he was putting out. That's just my note on that.
How that logic would follow, other than
So you're saying because I'm subjective, I don't have a
You can't
justification
use
for
metaphysics.
logic?
You can't use metaphysics. You have to deny.
It's good to be clear that her worldview doesn't justify metaphysics, but she can and does use metaphysics. It would be because people can confuse that for saying that you can't think, you dumb, you can't think, when that's not what the argument is.
I'm saying your metaphysics are wonky as fuck and don't make any logical sense at all.
No, logic
Well,
is
one sec. If they don't make logical sense, one sec. Where's the contradiction?
Who are you asking?
You're the one sec. You're the one that's saying you're making the claim it's illogical. Where's the
Yes.
contradiction?
Yes, God is something that is not proven, has no
Human value is not proven either, according to her worldview.
there's nothing true or truthful about this. It is a belief.
She made so many claims earlier that truth was subjective, or that it's essentially oh gosh,
It
is.
Is that a subjective
That-
opinion?
that others contradict. Yes, this is not. Are you going to tell me right now Christianity is a fact?
I can prove God to exist.
No,
by
that
his
God is real. That's a
exists
fact.
by
What I'm
his
saying
name
is-
alone.
You switched from a
Okay,
subjective
prove that-
epistemology to an
How-
objective epistemology by saying it's not true.
Prove
Right.
that God being real is a fact.
Is it?
Okay, one sec.
subjective or objective?
Everything in the universe, Ghosty, everything in the universe is in motion, correct?
Yes.
I don't think the motion thing, even if it were logically sound and a robust argument, I don't think it's convincing anybody, Teriak. I don't think that everything is in motion. Well, they already believe things are in motion, that just because it is what it is. Like the atheist band Rush would say, why does it happen? Because it happens, roll the bones. That's the answer, is just a material circularism.
Yeah. So what caused that motion? That motion is constant. The atoms are constantly spinning. What's causing that motion? Something that's unchanging, correct? Because it's constantly in motion, correct?
Are you trying to say it's God?
Oh, there's a whole bunch of assumptions.
Yeah, the unmoved mover argument from
That's God
Aristotle.
of the gaps. That's taking something
That's
that
not
we
God of the
don't
gaps.
See my previous video about God of the Gaps.
understand and saying, "Oh, it has to be God."
No, it's not. It's a philosophical proof. The fact that change is constant. This motion is constant.
I think I have a short about that, but it's going to come up in a future live stream when we talk about Eli Nix's debate with Planet Peterson.
Which means whatever causes it is unchanging.
Teriak, what's your belief system's name?
I'm more than willing to call it God. It's the likes of Ghosty, and this is why I hate these people,
But not
because they're the ones that are saying, well, there's clearly there's a
Don't hate people.
higher power, but I'm not going to call it God.
He's still playing on the fence about Christianity. He
Which
won't-
people are saying that, Tariak?
Okay, I just want to make clear that Teriak's
Ghosty?
argument's going to be way different than mine. That's all.
Yeah, no, because I can show physical phenomenon which they'll deny, like demoralization, which Ghosty denied.
They
That doesn't
associate all
prove
physical
God,
phenomenon
dummy.
with
Demoralization proves morality, dummy.
But based on what?
you first have to prove that demoralization has value and is not merely a chemical construct.
I would just
According to who?
That it's an observable physical phenomenon.
You can observe immorality.
Meaning, I'm giving you a
According to
materialist
everybody?
argument for morality, darling.
No, Tariak, wait, Tariak.
She
It's
doesn't
a
attach any
physical-
moral weight to
hang on.
demoralization. She doesn't attach any moral weight to that idea. It's all materialist, probably, if
Yeah.
she's atheistic. If she's pagan, I don't know what it is.
Tariak, that's not a materialist position.
Well, she
It's-
said
it's
earlier,
just a
she said,
position.
to be clear, she said earlier she's agnostic, so like she's not inclined to believe there's a God, but maybe
No,
there's
yeah,
There are
I-
spiritual- I bet you believe that there are
Incredulous?
actually spiritual forces in the universe, but there is no quote unquote God, which is why you say you're agnostic, right?
Spiritual forces could just be something I don't understand, or it could be something bigger and something.
So something I don't understand is that's the classic retreat box that a lot of atheists will say when you have a dichotomy. It's like, is it this or is it that? They always say there is probably the third option is I don't know, and I don't know means that because we could be wrong about things, therefore we could even be wrong about every necessary dichotomy in existence, and they would prove it's a necessary dichotomy. It's like, These are all gaslighting mind games. Sometimes things are a yes or no. Is there God or is there not God? And then is there morality or is there not morality? But this secret third option is just a farce.
Intelligent.
Well,
That's what agnostic means.
Well, how could it not be spiritual forces if you don't understand what it could, if you don't understand what it is or what it could be? How would it not be?
How could you determine when such a thing is proven?
Spiritual forces at that point.
Because it could just be physics and science and something that I don't.
Why are you
get.
relating it only to materialism, though?
Yeah, it comes back.
I'm agnostic. I'm saying
Hold
it
on,
could
hold on.
potentially
Let me
be
prove.
a.
You believe in things that are concepts, right? You believe in logic, right?
Yes.
Can you touch it? Can you
No.
measure it? Then why
No,
is God such an impossible concept?
Well, because it's illogical. And,
Language?
Oh, you idiot! It has an identity,
Uh-oh.
an ontology.
Now we go to name calling. No, you idiots. It's an illogical concept. Well, that would depend on what you already. If you have already thought that the bounds of existence are material and space and energy, then to say it's an illogical concept, I would say is begging the question.
It's
made up.
stupid if you don't realize that.
It's made
It's
up.
illogical.
Just like our
Illogical.
language.
Prove that.
Yes.
Just like our,
Okay, to say it's made up is to know that it doesn't exist. Then, which I don't know how she determined that.
our language makes
no,
up
let him
words to just.
demonstrate
Okay, one sec. Right, we accept. Everybody seems to accept that we have all these materials. Okay, what is causing these materials to be in motion?
Don't deflect. No, don't save him. Prove
I'm not
God is
saving them.
logical. Go.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we could. Yeah, I mean, I could do that using tag if you like, but I'm not sure that Easy would be up for that. I don't mind doing it. You know, Easy will confirm. I ain't scared of getting my hands dirty.
Using what?
You're using
Me throwing that hat is the reason Djokovic is going to lose tomorrow.
knowledge to start tags, so therefore you fail. Go ahead. Yeah.
Really? Okay, fine. So, on your view,
All right. Here we go, guys. All right. So this is a Christless tag. I would say this is generic, bland, vanilla tag. This is where you don't incorporate scripture because you feel the gag order to not bring up any doctrine. And then you can't define anything. So you can't get your arms around how the universe conforms to the God of the Bible versus generic propositional God who is a person. And that's about it.
God is
I'm in the crossfire.
Oh man, I'm not okay. So
You have to ground
God
knowledge.
is the.
Ground your epistemology. Start.
What do you mean by the word ground?
Ground your knowledge.
Yeah, what do you mean?
Knowledge.
Look, if I ask you what you mean by a word, saying the same word doesn't give me more information.
How do you justify knowledge?
What do you mean? You justify propositions, not knowledge. Knowledge is a process. You don't justify processes.
So you're saying you just automatically have access to knowledge?
What type of knowledge are you talking about? Procedural?
Knowledge.
Propositional?
By the way, that ding ding was just the bell for the ring, the boxing ring. It wasn't the real bell because I approved that. You can justify knowledge. You establish knowledge for sure. Otherwise, if you don't have a baseline understanding of knowledge, how can you to ground something is to establish it in an immovable standard by which it cannot be questioned, and to the exclusion of all other standards.
What type? There are different types. Phenomenological? Look, I know that I like coffee, right? But that's a
How do
different
you
sort
know
of
that?
knowledge
How
because
do you
it's
know that?
because I do.
Because you
I
do.
like
Here, you
coffee.
But that is internally consistent, though. To say, how do you remember something? You remember it because you remember it. That is the basis of a thing. Now, of course, you can say that your memory is unreliable. Sure, that's fine. But the concept of memory itself is internally inconsistent. Internally consistent in terms of its circularity. Some things just do have a circular basis. And the classic example, of course, is whatever you ground your epistemology in, which is what Zach is getting at.
Circular reasoning. Try again.
But it is true that you like it because you like it. It's just the standard thing. To argue out of someone out of their self is an extremely hard thing to do. So it would be best to have a different example that's more transcendent, has to do with more than just the self.
Because I like coffee.
Okay, that's circular.
So when I drink coffee, the sensations are pleasant.
Is logic objective?
No, I don't think so. Well,
Well, then
that's
you
a good-
fail.
Wait. So if logic isn't objective, how can you say that God is illogical? And I mean, look at my face, dude. Look at this face. Can I zoom in? No, only a little bit. Look at that though. How am I? Look at that. That says it all.
Already.
Hang on.
Again. Try again.
Well, you gotta let people finish.
Zach.
You gotta let people finish
Zach,
answering.
Stop being a fucking dick. I can be just as rude as you pompous ass. What the fuck? I'm happy to engage with you in good faith. Are you happy to do that?
Dude, you don't need a tone police, man.
Are you? Don't fucking tell me what to do, motherfucker.
Okay.
He's from the England, mate.
You can get mad all you want. It doesn't change it. If you can't argue,
You messing with a proper geezer, innit?
Tag says that God is a necessary precondition for knowledge, and that without God, we can't reliably reason. Is that a fair assessment of Tag, would you say?
all information stems from God. All transcendental stems.
Sorry, can you answer the question I asked? Was that a fair representation of the argument?
You would
Do you want me to be more precise? Do you want me to break it down into premises and
all
conclusion?
transcendental, not just knowledge. All transcendental categories come from God.
Okay,
You can hear Shiva's head hitting the desk. Thunk.
fine. Prove that.
God is the truth.
Prove that.
Does that
Demonstrate it.
Making the statement God's the truth won't do it. I think the prior what do you call it, the religion speed run would be a bit of a stronger presentation for that.
exist?
Prove it. Demonstrate it.
I'm asking you a question. Does
No, you're making assertions. You said absolute
It
truth
takes a
exists.
setup, you
Prove
fool.
it, motherfucker.
But if you could just
Prove
answer
it.
in good
Hey,
faith.
prove it, motherfucker. What's wrong with you? You made an assertion. Back your fucking assertion up.
Jack the Ripper lives.
No, I didn't think so.
Are you gonna go with the line of inquiry?
Right, tag.
Does
Premise
absolute
one.
truth exist?
Does it? Demonstrate that.
I'm asking you.
Oh, is that a question? Oh, sorry. I thought it was a statement. My mistake. I apologize.
Does absolute truth exist?
Absolute, meaning unchanging throughout time. No, I think truth is a proper
So I disagree with that framing to say unchanging throughout time. That would mean if absolute truth would have to exist, then nothing would ever change. In even in the slightest way, nothing would ever change. I think that is a not an imprecise framing. Maybe if I said dishonest, I meant it at the time, but I will walk it back because I can't read Shiva's mind. Because Shiva did earlier when I said, do lies exist, use the example of somebody who said something that was not a reflectant of reality, which could be a lie or it could be merely an untruth or a mistake. So that's imprecise.
property of
And we
proposition.
can't have the conversation.
Why? Do you think
believe
that
in it.
absolute?
Yeah, so unchanging doesn't debunk absolute truth. It might, yeah.
An
Do you think that absolute truth exists?
God is the absolute truth.
Great, demonstrate that. I'm open to it. Demonstrate
To
it. Show it
deny
to me.
absolute truth is a contradiction, you fool.
No, look. You're making the assertion God is absolute truth.
To
Yes.
deny absolute truth.
Are you
is a
making the
contradiction.
assertion God is absolute truth? Yes or no?
God has an ontology. And in that ontology, it,
Well, no, that's not the question I asked. Did you just say that God is absolute truth?
yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Demonstrate that, please.
If absolute truth exists, he would be it.
All right. So now you're
Mind,
introducing a
only
conditional.
universal mind that grounds all
So now you're introducing a conditional.
connect to each other.
So now it's a conditional. Now there's doubt. Absolute truth might not exist. Because you introduced the word if.
So if being a proposition, so yeah, being conditional, I think that makes sense. That the formulation appears to give doubt to the conclusion. So if you're saying it's conditional, then what Shiva is saying that it could be the other way. And so what you need to eliminate is the if from your presentation so as not to at least distract from the atheist the fact that you were saying it's all transcendentals. I think the if is meant to service the contrast between atheism and Christianity. The if is not there to say that it could be any other way. And that might have made it a bit clearer for Zach, but I was just going to let Zach do his own thing, seeing as he wanted to do his own thing. I could do
So
my
now
religious
now
speedrun
now
again.
you're on much
Wait,
shakier ground. Now you're not so certain whether absolute truth exists or
Does a
not.
definition not require does a definition have to not be a conditional? I think I've worded that wrong, but does a definition have to not be a conditional in order for it to be defined? In order for it
No, but if you're making
You're
an
using
assertion,
logic if-thens work.
if you're making an assertion such as God is absolute truth, and then when you later when you're asked to demonstrate that, you then say, well, if absolute truth exists, right, then you have automatically weakened your position.
Something
quick,
true
real
is
quick,
provable and
Nihilist.
verifiable.
Nihilist. Or would that be true the other way around too? To say that if God exists, then automatically a theist can say, "Aha, you've weakened your position." I mean, maybe Shiva is saying if you're using a transcendental argument, you cannot start with the word if, because if would allow for alternatives. By what epistemic criteria are we supposed to prove all things by?
Yeah, because if the definition is
would
going
like
to be
to
off
know
of
what
an if
absolute
then
truth
statement, then
means.
every
Yeah, me
definition is
too.
called every definition is called into question because you have to form a conditional in order to prove it.
Yeah, Tomahawk,
You
the
can
confusion is
verify it?
basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to prove that truth is true.
See, I'm convinced that I had the right approach, and everybody else brought these other approaches that were, did not really put Shiva in the corner that I wanted.
Right.
So could somebody-
For something to be
have the
true.
conversation
Which is why I asked
in
about
the
which is why I
first
asked about
place.
definitions and defining things, because defining things using conditionals, and that if a definition requires that it not be a conditional in order to be quote accepted as a definition.
Yeah, so if I'm submitting my evidence to the court of Shiva, what criteria should I be submitting it to, and how do I know that Shiva's court's criteria is justified?
In answer to the second question, you don't. In answer to the first
Right.
question,
Well, that's kind of important, right? Because if you say demonstrated for me and your requirements for what demonstration is are insufficient, and you can't know what sufficient demonstration of a worldview is, how can you stand in judgment of somebody else's worldview?
I think it depends on what it is that you're claiming to know, right?
Is it objectively true that it depends on what you are complaining? Ugh. I'm gonna need some fuel. 4 hours of streaming, man. But how can it depend upon something unless you are already hiding your criteria, or at least not declaring what your criteria is? Because to say it depends means there's different gradations of claims and there's different gradations of criteria. Because if it does not depend on what you are claiming, then you can't say that it has different requirements or any requirements at all to establish your worldview or your definitions.
Like,
Well,
would you not agree that knowing 2 + 2 = 4 is a different sort of knowledge from, say, knowing how it feels to do a specific sort of dance, like the tango?
I agree it's a different category of study, but that also begs the question of absolute truth, because in order to make the distinction, it must be absolutely true that those two are distinct.
Why?
Yeah, because they have an
Because
identity.
you even admitted to it. Your
have
entire
an
example, you
identity.
says you would agree with this. Well, then if our agreement on something is irrelevant, then I don't know why you brought it up.
If it's
No,
absolute-
wait,
You
wait,
haven't
no,
even
no,
tried to
no,
verify
no.
or prove
what
your
are you
belief,
saying?
so.
By what
Yeah,
standard?
one sec,
What are you saying?
Why do I care what your criteria is?
Using that
Why
as
should I
the
care what your
criteria, right?
criteria is?
Or what?
Hold up, guys.
No.
Remember, I know you all can hear each other up here, but the chat doesn't hear you guys,
Sorry.
and you guys won't hear everything each other is saying. Ghosty, you were saying something there?
The same way that we can verify and prove to our best ability that like the facts of science, the
So when you
facts
say-
of life.
Sorry,
Yes.
go ahead.
No, that's it.
When you say verify, prove, and facts, do you mean objective truth?
Verification can be done through like getting other people to co-sign, to agree,
argument.
So
Isn't
8 out
that
of
ad
10
populum,
doctors
though?
agree.
Like
Yep.
to
You
observe, like
Yep.
to observe the same fact as others. This is
So-
how verification works.
Hold
often.
on, hold on. So
So
that-
it'd
that's
be
the-
absolutely true.
That's the 8 out of 10 doctors example that you see on advertisements everywhere that try to scam you. 8 out of 10 doctors agree that this will be good for you. That like Ozempic is the way to go for weight loss. So
Oh,
to
it's not. It's not. Oh no.
I'm just
Hold on,
telling
hold
you
on.
how
Just
like
as an
science.
example.
No, we're
kidding.
talking about.
If 8 out of 10 doctors, so I guess my question would then be, why are the 2 doctors who disagree, I guess, discarded in this case? If we're talking absolute truth, wouldn't it be 10 out of 10 doctors agree?
No,
I
but it might be
mean,
absolutely
science.
true that 8 out of 10 doctors agree.
Right.
Because the word absolute here just means unchanging throughout time, right? Like it's true a million years ago, it'll be true a million years.
No,
time.
because
science is
who is the
usually
president
debatable.
changes. So there are different conditionals. There are contingent truths, and then there are absolute truths that are transcendent.
Right,
Those are
but
not
it-
the same thing.
But
What about
it's
this for
absolutely
definition?
true that Donald Trump is president now, though, right?
Correct. But Abraham Lincoln was president and is no longer
Yeah.
president.
Although saying when I say it is absolutely true, I'm not sure that I agree that it is, but I'm guessing I'm just kind of saying I guess I'm saying that's what I think your position would be.
But you have to use absolute
Can
truth
we-
to justify that.
Yeah, well, I mean,
But-
language is tricky, right? You've got to use we use it colloquially and sloppily, and I do as well.
That's why I wanted to clarify our language first. How do you define absolute truth? Where do you ground that?
Some people won't even submit to that.
Yeah, truth.
Because,
Like what?
because we all have different opinions on that. So
But like as a standard definition, truth is what is. Like that should be everybody should be able to agree with that because the distinction is truth is what is and false is what is
Okay,
not.
but is
That's one
it
of your
true?
catchphrases.
Is it true that the sky is blue, even though different like species won't see that color blue?
No, it's true.
Well, no,
that
because the sky's not blue at
The
night.
sky's black where I'm at.
yeah.
Yeah.
Currently, to me, the sky is black, and sometimes it is gray, but it's cloudy.
I'm just joking
Okay.
around.
Or
But
sometimes they get red
Right.
and green.
So here's what is true. When the photons hit the cones in my eyes, I perceive a color that we call blue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is the color the sky is not, because that's the reflected wavelengths of light rather than the absorbed wavelengths.
For the sake of this conversation, sure.
Okay, that's fair.
Anyways,
So in terms of this, truth is what is. Like that's an accurate definition.
Conventional.
Like, otherwise, what
I would go for
does
that.
the word is mean?
Yeah, so I think I'm just going to be agreeing with most of what's going on at that point in the conversation. I don't remember a whole lot that was that much different at that point. I think I hit most of the highlights I was going to hit today with that. But hey, for those of you who stuck along, thanks for coming along. This is still kind of a test stream. I still haven't figured out everything that goes on with Riverside. I know I'm broadcasting to Twitch and YouTube and X right now, or at least I believe that I am broadcasting to YouTube and Twitch and X right now. As far as the cones in my eyes and the senses I have and reasoning that I have, if they are reliable, they would tell me that I am broadcasting to those things. But thank you so much for watching. I think I'm going to hold off for today, and I'm going to get you more juicy content. I'm going to shoot for next week. I'm not sure when on Saturdays. I haven't exactly set a particular time to do it. But I think Saturdays would be the day that makes the most sense and the most time for me to do these things. So I bid you adieu. And you know what? Let's do a test. Can I do an actual live outro with my video here?